Hello, horses and bronitas of post-apocalyptia. This is your VP of Communications, SkyBolt, speaking. And, yeah, he's had one hell of a week. It's, the last 7 days have just been one shit show after another, so that's been fun. I got everything rounded out. Deadlines at work, and overtime, and getting hospitalized in the emergency room with fucking my weak stomach. And, yeah, it's been a challenging week. And now I think all the problems are about over, so I'm trying to forget about them. I'm trying to start off the weekend by doing just something I like, which is monologuing. I'm good at this, just speaking into the darkness, and then having our wonderful followers and subscribers chime in and keep me sane. So that's fun. So we're also going to listen to some calming horse music at the same time because I need it right now. We're listening to a playlist called Relaxing Pony Music, a playlist organized by Winter Rose. So if you would like to follow all the songs I'm playing, just time code it and scroll through that playlist. It's got a lot of good stuff. So I don't think the stream can get Wazajniaked because this is horse music. And I don't think even Andrew Stein Mando Pony has his stuff in their copyright system. So anyway, how is everyone doing today? I know it's like a Thursday, but it's like a Friday for me because I had tomorrow off as my regular off day. So how's everyone doing? It's except for the last 7 days, it's actually been a really fantastic couple of weeks getting Confession 7 shit. Yeah, Confession 7 shit going. So that's pretty fun. So the stress picture can get replaced with Ponk hugging great berry horse picture. And all that coming along just famously, actually. So it's going to be exciting. We're waiting on just a few more things. A special piece of art and stuff they're still in production, but it's going to be worth it. It's always worth it. I know sometimes the wait sucks, but it's always worth it. I swear. It's going to be great. 2 weeks. Yeah, no, I'm seeing in the chat, not rough week for some people also. Have I considered murder? Yes, but only of myself. So it's not necessarily illegal. No, probably not. It's over now. That's all that matters. Can always get worse. But, yeah, so it's just, yeah, it's been fun. And, yeah, there's a lot of developments in the wide world out there too, aren't there? I finally broke down and I reserved my copy. I let little Todd, little Todd come up to me and stick his hands in my wallet and take away more of my money, and I ended up pre-ordering the PC edition of Fallout 76 to take me home to West Virginia. So I'm getting the tricentennial package to get whatever, that stuff it comes with. I want the power armor stuff, but I'm almost reserved to the fact that I'll probably never get it. I'm just it's just like back in the day. It's like if I had known I would be a super fan of Fallout, I would have gotten the Fallout 3, Ultimate Pack, and then the New Vegas Ultimate Pack. It's like by the time I finally was fully on board, then I got the Fallout 4 Ultimate Pack, and what does that come with? It comes with the ugly banana Pip-Boy. I almost said Pip-Buck. I've said Pip-Buck in public a few times, and luckily no one's got it, except my one friend who's not a brony, but finds the whole thing amusing. Can we talk about that for a minute? The Fallout 4 and Pip-Boy is fucking hideous. Why is it this it looks like you went up to a super mutant and you fed it a normal Pip-Boy from Fallout 3, and then you also fed him a shitload of radioactive bananas, and then he he once again regurgitated out this piece of crap, and that's what we have as a Pip-Boy. That's my only Pip-Boy. Although I did buy something on Etsy that looks much closer to the original Fallout 3 Pip-Boy. I have no idea if that'll arrive at some point, but it's something I spent money on this week. It's got lights too, LEDs, so we'll see what happens there. I think it's coming from like Canada or Europe though, so that's probably gonna take a while. In the chat, haven't missed anything. Shall we go on a crusade? Yeah, let's go. Let's go Cutie Mark crusading. I wanna trade mine in and re-roll. See if I can get a different Cutie Mark. Is this something else, please? That'd be sweet. I actually had an amusing anecdote with a friend of mine this week, which was just great. It was a friend who was going on like, yeah, I have to do this, and it's like, man, what I wouldn't give to trade places with you. Just like, for now, probably, but it's like, right now I feel like forever. And it's like, the number of problems in your life and the problems in my life feel very outweighed. But anyway, that's the way the cards fall sometimes. And, you know, I should have expected it because I had such a good couple of weeks before this that yeah, then everything would go all like this. I don't know. Maybe I try not to, like, set up those patterns in my mind because then you, like, expect it. But it's like, sometimes it's like, you can't have a period of, like, chill without then expecting it, you know, oh, it can only get worse. It can only go down. And that's just like, so anyway, so, yeah, so Fallout 76, I am excited. Let Todd Howard reach his hand into my wallet and take more of my money. He's gotten so much of it over the years, that bastard. But, you know, I'm pretty sold into the fandom now. I mean, without Todd Howard's lying ways, we wouldn't be here now. We wouldn't have confessions, and we wouldn't have all sorts of this shit. So, hey, you know, speaking of decompressing images, let's have some nice Rarijack, because that's been going on this week or this last week. I didn't even see whatever the new Equestria Daily, or not Equestria Daily, but Equestria Girls short was, but apparently they've got like, there's like a thing or like a hint or like a blush, and now everyone's run with it, and I'm okay with this. This is great, actually. This is like, you know, for me, this is like the number 1 and number 2 becoming a number, you know, 0 or something. That's pretty great if you ask me. Lucandrix in the chat, older versions of the Pip-Boy, another cool place would be the Deep South, like Louisiana. Yeah, no, I actually always thought that a New Orleans-based Fallout game would be really cool. I think we said this on a very old podcast where it was like, well, not essentially, but you could have, it'd be like an expanded point lookout, and then you go into all the other interesting things of the South, and also, you know, 100 years of fictional South history from, you know, the time of the Fallout timeline divergence, because the whole Fallout 3 Van Buren thing was supposed to be set in Texas, I think. It wasn't like the Gulf Coast, I don't think. It was more like central, like, you know, big open plains like West Texas. But still, that's a neat area, you know? And I think I've said before how much I adore Point Lookout as a TLC. I mean, and that frickin' Duchess Horror was largely inspired by it. Everything from the, you know, Dunwichian Lovecraftian elements to the, you know, the mansion in the swamp and the, yeah, just kind of the feel. That's cool. And, yeah, there's a lot of neat places around New Orleans, too. You have, I forget the name of it. That lake, is it Pontchartrain? The really big-ass lake with the causeway right down the middle of it? That could be kind of like a neat mission or something, where you have to walk the whole length of the bridge, and maybe there's like a raider camp in the very middle, or it's like a raider kingdom, or like a faction kingdom location. And, you know what else? Then you could use that lake I'm probably screwing up the lake name. I'm gonna say Pontchartrain. You could use Lake Pontchartrain as also like a containment zone, and you could have like jet skis. I remember ever since the Halo old Halo demo from like the Mac days. Because Halo 1 was going to be a Mac game, if anyone finds that, you know, utterly hilarious, that then it went on to make Apple's main competitor, Microsoft, so much shitloads of money that it's, like, can't even be fathomed. But yeah, Bungie was a hardcore, like, Apple, like, the entire Marathon series, and I think Myst were all, like, Mac games and stuff. But, where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. So anyway, the Macworld Expo demo of the original Halo, when it was like an RTS, they had jet skis in it. I think they were called like Duggars or something, or my brain is saying Ski-Doo, but no, it wasn't like the brand name. It was some kind of like, you know, Halo name, like the Scorpion Tank or like the Warthog. Anyway, ever since then, I thought that would be a really neat way to, you know, have sort of vehicle play in an RPG kind of environment. Like, I think I've also said in the past that, you know, Halo... damn it, now I'm on Halo. Fallout Hawaii would be a really neat game. And if you make it interlinked between the islands, you can make it so maybe you have to cross between the islands on, like, a catamaran, which is, you know, like... You know, the Polynesians have been doing that for like 10,000 years or 40, 50,000 years. So that'd be easy. You know, a bunch of wastelanders just make a catamaran boat and sail over. And that could be like a quest too. Like maybe you start on like Kauai and you have to work your way all the way to the Big Island, which is like northwest to southeast. Anyway, what was I saying? The fucking jet skis. Yeah, so besides the catamaran, water play Wastelanders would be pretty great, where you have like, you know, the little coves or whatever, and you can battle like you can battle raiders on jet skis and like use them to like circumnavigate the island faster. Okay, what a lot of this breaks down to is I went jet skiing when last time I was in Oahu, which was like 10 years ago or something, and that was a fun-ass time. It was in Waikiki Bay, which is the really famous touristy one, and we had such a good time. It was me and my brother and stuff, and yeah, we rented them for like, I think 2 hours, but that's a hell of a time. Like, your arms vibrate so much that it feels like they're gonna fall off. They feel numb from all the riding around, and we were racing through the channel, and we hit a sea turtle too. I hit a sea turtle that, like, I didn't see at all, but they're like, yeah, if you feel like some large, like, thunk, it's probably a turtle. It's probably fine, you know, they're pretty rough, but it's like, they give zero shits. They're just still gonna float around, no matter how often the jet skis have been there. Oh yeah, so so back to Louisiana. Back to Louisiana from Hawaii. Well, you know what? We're going to tie all this together, because we're talking alternate Fallout location ideas, and we can talk about the Fallout Miami trailer that dropped either today or yesterday. That incredible big mod that they've been building for, I think it's either New Vegas PC or Fallout 3 PC or something. Anyway, so I've talked about Fallout Hawaii enough, but like Fallout New Orleans, I think I mentioned in the past, the whole reason I have a Navy connection in my family at all is because my mother was in the Navy. She was Naval Reserve for like 30 years, a long time. And so she'd go down to New Orleans all the time, because that's where the U.S. Naval Reserve Base is. It's like, you know, they combine all these bases now with, one thing I disagree with, which is just as someone who's worked for the military in the past, is the names. The names are so damn stupid. I hate the term joint base. It just sounds, it sounds dumb. It sounds like something a bureaucrat would come up with, not like a cool army name, you know? I always bitch about that and the numbers, when people call things by numbers rather than like a nickname. Like, you know, when you think of Halo, you think of a Scorpion Tank. You're not thinking of I don't even know what it is, an M125, you know, armored weapon vehicle. Anyway, and there's shit like that in the normal military too, where it's like the Osprey, the tilt rotor main craft that the Marines have, and the Air Force and Army, they have some too. It's like, at least for me, when I saw them swirling around all the time, they were Ospreys. That's cool. You know, it's a ocean bird of prey. And, you know, no one's calling it the Bell helicopter, you know, a rigid tilt rotor V-22. Like, that's stupid. Let's call it by a number, something neat. So back to New Orleans. So yeah, New Orleans would be a really cool location because it would be like Point Lookout expanded. And you'd have that infinite swamp. You could have same thing, kind of what they're doing with West Virginia, where you can take a lot of the local folklore and sort of the history of the area, because New Orleans just has such a fascinating history. Because there was a short time frame where it was owned by the Spanish, you know, the Spanish that ate up all of South America in that 16th century. And then you had then the French move in and make a very more established presence. And not only that, but a lot of the Creole and what's the other word? Not Cherokee. It's another word like that of local inhabitants. They were the French that settled in Nova Scotia, that then after that British and French war in Canada up there for something, it drove I think it was Arcadians they were called, out of Nova Scotia, the French Nova Scotians, and they sailed all the way down the Mississippi River, because basically the whole Mississippi River Valley was owned by the French. And they stopped at the bottom, not as one does, because that was like one of the biggest French outposts in the New World, and so there's a large community. I actually knew a girl earlier in the year. She's kind of hot. I was trying to put the moves. It didn't ultimately work out, but we had some fun times. And she had family from there that were like classical, like Canadian, Arcadian, or Acadian New Orleans Creoles, and that's really neat. I love that kind of history. You know, that like, you know, you can really like show your family like progression throughout history, or at least a decent chunk of it. Because my family's interesting, where one side it's like, oh yeah, so one step back is Norway, and then it was Norway for 100,000 years since humans either evolved there or went up there from fucking Africa. So that side of the family is a bit more complicated, because that's the German side, so that's where there's a lot of, you know, empty records and little bullshit, like, you know, like Ducky and Holy Roman Empire era like wars. So no one remembers anything beyond the 1700s. So anyway, back to New Orleans. Back to New Orleans. New Orleans would be great. Yeah, so we got the Lake Pontchartrain. Let's see. Let me scroll in the chat, see if anyone's corrected me yet, or no one cares. Anyway, fun fact, fun engineering fact, of course, that's one of the longest bridges in the U.S. is that bridge. And yeah, so that would be a neat location. And then of course you could, you know, Fallout ties the New Orleans Naval Base as it is and make it bigger and cooler, and you know, add more boats. I mean, it's very interesting the way the channel is carved in there, because it's sort of like it's like a gradient between open ocean, and then you get like sandbars and like marshy outcroppings. Would you call those sounds? And then you've got like the one clear channel that was mostly natural from the runoff of the Mississippi Valley Basin. But then, you know, humans have expanded over the years for ships and stuff, all that good stuff. And yeah, and you could have extended locations going up into like Memphis. Memphis could be a DLC. You could have like Texas DLCs, or go over to like what is it called? Pascagoula. That's where a ton of Navy like shipbuilding yards are. Or you could just, you know, just put it in New Orleans, in the fictional Fallout New Orleans, and really beef up the area, you know, with some fictional elements too. And I mean, not to be insensitive, but you could always have a plot line about, like, you know, certain areas being flooded, or like you have to open a levee or a drain gate or something, because there are large parts of the city that are sort of artificially, you know, held together. And in a post-Fallout world, that could change quite drastically. You know, I say that as someone who's grown up in a very similar area. The Sacramento Valley is very largely artificial, and it was because of, you know, a lot of levee systems and dams and stuff that it's even, you know, livable the way it is. Fun fact, if you ever come to Sacramento or care to, there is a, right by the city's capital is the old town Sacramento. That's like, you know, as soon as the U.S. got California in a little skirmish, the old town Sacramento is actually an underground kind of thing. It's like a tour I have actually been on it myself, but, they had to abandon the lower city, sort of. It's not like a big lower city, but there's a lot of old structures that you can still walk around in, I guess. And they'd abandon it because they'd flood too often because of the rivers. It's like a delta, so there's like 2 or 3 rivers that converge there. And so then when Sacramento became the California capital, they started reinforcing and did old 19th century renovations. And then turn of the century and, you know, in World War II era, then they did all the more modern, like, infrastructure work, which is now starting to expire. So anyone, you know, especially if you're not American, but you're a fan of international news, we almost had a major disaster 2 springs ago when the, what's it called? Oroville Dam almost breached, which is the, like, second largest dam in California. Like, if that flooded, it would have flooded, like, a giant part of Northern California, because it's holding, like, 5 billion... It's either gallons or square or cubic meters. And I know that's a big difference, but it's just a lot of fucking water, basically. And, yeah, that would have probably flooded all of Sacramento, too. Okay, so, has this been fun for everyone? This is me with weeks of, like, just the free thought that I haven't had to express at all. That basically, it's been clustered inside my mind while I've had one side of my mind with just, like, the panic button, like, flashing over and over again, and then the other side of my mind, which was focused on stupid engineering stuff, that because I had, like, all these things that were almost late, but I got them all done, so that worked out. And I'm gonna throw more Rarajack on screen because I really like looking at them. So Fallout New Orleans. The factions could be really cool too. Like, you think of, you could have, like, you know, of all these history types, you could have, like, an Andrew Jackson faction, you could have the Confederate faction, you could have all sorts of, like, different things. You could have the Texans versus the other Southerners. I don't know. That could be fun. But anyway, there's also the, I'll be honest, I haven't even watched the trailer yet. Actually, we could do that now. That would actually be something useful, you know, put purpose to the stream besides me, like, you know, me stepping off of the ledge and pulling the gun out. Let's find that Fallout Miami trailer. Okay, now let's hide the taskbar. Where is it? Bookmarks bar. Don't show. Okay, yeah, let's watch this together. We can live react because I actually haven't seen this yet. Let's open a window, display capture. Nope, not that one. That one. Isn't that a nice picture? I love this picture of Twilight. Okay, and I'll turn the desktop audio up for you guys, and let's check it out.
The rolling sea, moon over Miami, shine on as we begin. A dream or
very appropriate slow pan
that may
or slow zoom.
when the time comes
This place used to be paradise. Now you got these young kids from up north with their souped-up cars. Don't even get me started on those slaver schmucks.
Oh, it's a Fallout 4 mod. That makes more
But
sense.
people out here survive. Some folks scavenge, others steal. The good ones band together, form communities for protection. Miami's a tough place. If it's not the gangs or the gator claws, it's the damn sandstorms. Or something much, much worse. I still remember when this place was peaceful, beautiful. We had the beaches, the celebrities. People came from all over just to vacation here. Families with children. Good, hard-working Americans. But that was a long time ago. Just do yourself a favor. Don't go near that building.
The interplay.
Something strange is going on. And I hate to say it, but this might be the beginning of something big.
Well, I'll be goddamn. That was incredible. Man, that's like a real like DLC trailer. It reminded me of you know, like the New Vegas era. We got some brohoods. Greetings from the vacation wasteland. Well, I'll be damned. That's incredible. I gotta hand it to the Fallout Miami team. That's some good shit right there. Oh my gosh. That's I'm excited. Let me turn this off. Yeah, that looks great. I gotta learn. See, now that I'm getting Fallout 76 for PC, it's gonna force me to actually get good with being master race. And so maybe I can finally learn how to do mods and shit for PC, and then I can pull out, you know, because of course I bought the mini nuke with all the PC Fallout 3 in New Vegas, and go through mods on there, and heck, do playthrough captures like this, like we're hoping to do with Fallout 76. Can we talk about that too, real quick? Is that they finally announced the beta date, and it's gonna be October? That is not a beta date. A beta would have been like now, like the first month or couple months ongoing after the announcement. October, if people start reporting problems, they're not having shit fixed by, what, November 15th? No, it's classic Bethesda fashion where the beta period is going to be the first 6 months of the game's release. I think I've told the story where when fucking... I'm going to put music back on, too. When, what's it called? When Dead Money came out, I I had Eddie at the time, and then when the stupid what's his name gassed me, Father Elijah gassed me and took me over to the Sierra Madre, Eddie got all mad at me. Like, I came back after, you know, frustrating time trying to play Dead Money the first time. I was not prepared for that. And damn, Eddie got all mad. He went to Prim, and he was hostile towards me for like 4 months until they released a new patch. I literally had to stop playing New Vegas because I didn't have too many saves until, and I didn't want to replay Dead Money yet, until he came back, until they fixed that. So I ended up playing, I think that was my like second or third Fallout 3 playthrough then. Oh, God. back to the chat. See what you guys have been talking about. Fallout set in Texas/Mexico would be pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know what the status of Mexico was during the Fallout games. I know there's one guy who was doing a series of videos about like what was going on in blank when, you know, the Great War happened. Mexico, Latin America, Europe, Africa, all that good stuff. And it seems like there's really no established lore for that. So it's interesting. Yeah, people checking out. I understand. It's a bit of a weird time and a bit of a weird stream. This is just me trying to decompress. Like I said, we're not having a bad time anymore. Plus, this is great. Just being able to like talk like normal stuff. This is, oh man, it's been rough. On the bright side, wait, what were we talking about? I'm seeing Civil War 3 in the chat. Fallout set around here. Oh, yeah. The politics of having a Fallout set in the South. Honestly, it already feels like they're treading carefully that way with West Virginia. Because West Virginia's so, you know, Appalachian and so on. And yeah, luckily it's like, it's not well known enough where it'd be controversial because, well, it was a Union state, so it's not exactly the South. So there's that. But yeah, in the greater politics, you can tell where they're like, okay, so we're going to tell you guys about West Virginia to help introduce you to the location. You know, you can kind of feel that, like, framing, or at least I felt that framing going through those first videos when they announced it. But no, West Virginia's great. It's good rural people. There's really no big cities. I'm trying to think. The biggest city, which is probably in the game, is I think the capital, which is it's not Charleston. Is it Charleston? I had to memorize this in like 4th grade or whatever, all the state capitals. I think it's Charleston. Anyway, and that's probably, you know, nothing in comparison. There's no Los Angeles or New York or even like a Seattle or a Miami. It's just, you know, it's sort of a continuum of like, you know, rural Appalachian countryside. And I gotta say, too, it's beautiful country. I crossed through just a little bit of West Virginia, but I was mostly still on the normal Virginia side of the mountain range. But, it's beautiful there. It's just, like, nice open rolling hills, and you still have a bit of that, like, Atlantic, like, breeze coming off of it. Oh, man. Oh, yeah, people reacting to Holy Roman Empire. Gunrunners, not the Gunners. Original Fallout Equestria. Actually, with all the lore in Fallout Equestria, someone could make a series like Oxhorn. Yeah, I gotta say, I really just discovered Oxhorn in like the last couple of weeks, and damn, that dude, 6 videos a week. And, you know, of course, the Fallout games have tons of lore and walkthroughs to exploit, but that guy has work ethic. That is someone who really deserves, you know, all the money he's getting out of making a YouTube career, because that's one hardworking dude, and he's got a solid presentation style and a way of like writing and organizing the lore into something very digestible. I've been just listening to it at work, to be honest, especially this week, where I'm just going through like, oh, the Pit total, you know, video series, and then I stop by the time it's the you know, it's like the stuff video, like all the loot you can get, because I'm not playing the game right now, and I hate being reminded that I've never completed the steel ingots. There's always one pile of 3 I could never find. Drove me crazy. I worked for years, and I got almost every single achievement in Fallout 3 except for the damn steel ingots in the pit. And it still pisses me off to this day. Like, I never knew about the tribal power armor because of that. So, that sucked. Aren't these Rare Jack picks great? This is soothing stuff. And then the music, too. What song are we on? Oh, yeah, there's definitely Derpidity. Or, yeah, it's Derpidity. Man, I miss Derpidity. Is he still making music? And he's got some great stuff. I've got a whole old playlist of his stuff from, like, 2012 and 13. I did get to meet him at that one Sac Brony Expo, if any of you guys have been following my stuff for that long. He's great. Very soothing, relaxing guitar, like horse music. Really great for driving or like this, decompressing. But yeah, Oxhorn is great. I'm seeing someone in the chat saying it's Enclave in that Fallout Miami trailer. Okay, that's great. What a great way to test it. Todd Howard is pulling a fast one. Yeah, Todd Howard's always doing something crazy. Although I hate to say it, I just thought another good spot would be in Bama, Alabama. Yeah, no, I mean, you start off in, which one's the port city again? Is that Mobile? Or is it something else? I'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with the Deep South. My time in the South was in Virginia. Whether it was the capital or not, it is a different culture in, like, Virginia, Tennessee, like, Appalachia South versus, like, Deep South. And then even when I lived in Oklahoma definitely identifies more as, like, plain state. Oklahoma's more like a Kansas or a Nebraska than Alabama. But no, I mean, I think I've told the story too. I almost ended up being an Alabaman, where before my parents had me, they were looking at job offers, and one place they were considering for a job was the U.S. Army Missile Command in Huntsville, Alabama, which is that's a pretty crazy place, Huntsville. It's and actually, yeah, that would make an interesting Fallout location too. That could be could do all sorts of stuff there. Yeah, that would be neat. Yeah, so a lot of cool options there. I don't know. They could do a lot with Fallout stuff. They honestly, after the Pit mentioned Ronto, I thought they would have some kind of Canadian Fallout offshoot, because technically, when the Great War happened, Canada was part of the United States, so it would still gel with the standard Fallout trope of being America only. See, the tricky thing, and the reason why, 2 or 3 studios still haven't deviated from that, is because Fallout as a concept is so deeply rooted in, like, Cold War American jingoism that it's tricky to disconnect from that. You'd still have to have that wire somewhere in the tone of the series. So it'd have to be like, it'd have to be like a NATO thing, essentially, where it's like, maybe if you had a Fallout in, like, Europe, it would be based around, like, a Rammstein or some kind of, like, forward operating location of, American imperial hegemony, which is unfortunate, but that's, that's the deck we've got right now. And I mean, just like World War II, the Great War kind of would have played out where, like, everyone had to take a side. It's a bit more complicated, though, at least according to Fallout lore. Like, kind of Russia, they are involved, but they're almost like a non-player in a lot of ways, and Europe and the Middle East sort of cancel each other out, unfortunately. In, like, the 2050s, there's, like, a nuclear war then, a limited nuclear war. That's the other thing a lot of people don't realize, is that it's like the whole concept of mutually assured destruction really only came about during the invention of the hydrogen bomb, because the hydrogen bomb is the one that can create, thousand times more powerful than the Hiroshima Nagasaki stuff. I mean, both the US and Canada, and hell, even North Korea have produced bombs bigger than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which is unfortunate. Those are horrific, but it's like, some American history, majors or, like, disciples of history, like I try to be, know that at the end of World War II, Douglas MacArthur, U.S. Army general, he wanted to have a limited atomic engagement with China to end the Korean War almost before it started. Because, of course, the Korean War was a proxy war between U.S. hegemony on the south side of the peninsula and then the Chinese communist hegemony creeping in from the top. And was the guy's name Ho Chi Minh? Or no, that's Vietnam. Kim Il-sung, duh. And anyway, of course it was a proxy war, but yeah, MacArthur wanted to go full limited nuclear engagement with them, which would have been a nightmare because the Russians or Soviets already had a nuclear bomb too. They detonated their first one in like 49, I want to say. So by the time Korea was playing out, it was already too late for that to be an option. By the way, alternate history hub guy. He's where I got where I learned about this, about how MacArthur wanted to have that limited engagement and how history would have played out if that just became commonplace. Like, just like in World War II, like every time there was a sizable war, a nuke was like thrown into play. Because I mean, if you really look at like the body statistics of World War II, the nuclear bombs, they weren't even close. Not close, but like even in Japan, they weren't like the top 3. Actually, the weeks and months previous, over that summer of 45, there was like the firebombing of Tokyo and 2 other coast cities. I think that they killed way more people. Well, again, I'm not trying to underplay the nuclear weapons. I'm just trying to point out that the gravity, so to speak, of them was of their potential and of their, monolithic status as a super weapon. But like, just with raw napalm, I mean, we did more damage to Vietnam and like Dresden with just conventional firebombing than a nuclear bomb. I mean, all you need is a certain amount of conventional fire explosives, and I mean, my God, if you read about some of the stuff that happened to Dresden, I mean, just it's same as any nuclear bomb story. People vaporize instantly, the air sucked out of your lungs, all the oxygen instantly igniting to like 1,000 degrees. Like I had family not far from Dresden, backwoods rural sides of Germany and Hungary and Czechoslovakia. It's like, it could have easily ended me way before I started. It's like, ugh. Horrible. And that's what people never realize, is that, oddly enough, the nuclear bombs have almost saved more people than they've killed just because of mutually assured destruction. It's like, even the proxy conflicts between the US and Russia and China and whatever have all been sort of reduced in scope to keep everything under a certain boiling point, which is really fucked up. But that's interesting. It's, what were we talking about? See people, Chinese invasion. Actually, that was one thing I always thought about the Operation Anchorage was the, it would be great to play out the Gobi Desert campaign. Because if you know the Fallout lore in, like, I want to say 75... Well, that's in the opening of Fallout 4, your character... Well, Nate, I think specifically. I don't think Nora ends up going... I don't think she's a soldier during the war. She was the, what was she doing? The Nora, if you play a female character, the Nora character was, I think a lawyer, I want to say. She was some kind of, like, law practice or whatever. Because, obviously, she's not on the battlefield when she's pregnant. Because that'd be kind of tricky. But, I mean, it could happen, but then you wouldn't be on the battlefield for much longer. There's our Confessions of Wasteland Pony tie-in. It's just like Turquoise, Star Paladin Turquoise and his wife, where they're like, oh, we got knocked up in the field. Gotta find something to do back in Castle Alpha, because we can't have you walking around with a baby bump for too long. Anyway, where I think Nate, I think part of the Fallout 4 lore was he was in the Gobi Desert campaign, because that was like the end of the conventional war, so to speak. And then there was sort of the lull and the big question about who drops the bomb first when the actual capital letters Great War happens. Like, sort of things had kind of resolved. I mean, well, obviously not resolved, but things had kind of reached a certain breaking point where I guess you could almost think of it like the Korean armistice, or maybe like right before the invasion of Berlin by the Red Army, where it's like, almost everything is settled. It's just the last, like, all or nothing Hail Mary. And then, let's say you think China does it because they sort of lost in the conventional exchange. Then they're just like, fuck it, and go nuclear. And then you've got a world of mutants and then a bunch of Swiss people. Because apparently, and I've always known about the Swiss Redoubt as like a famous, like, like fortify the entire border of your country, which is kick ass. But apparently, like all these bomb shelters are carved into the Alps, where they could almost house the entire population of Switzerland for a few months, which is that's really fucking cool. I'll be honest, I wish America had more things like that, even though that's, as Cold War crazy as it can get. Switzerland's actually pretty well defended in terms of a nuclear war, because unless you drop nuclear bombs right in the valley, like the valleys that make up Switzerland, between, I forget what the other mountain range is. I know it's the Alps to the south side, like the Italy side, and then there's some other mountain range on like the French-German side that like kind of makes it a valley. And then you've got like Bern and Geneva on the edges. But anyway, I mean, because it's an elevated plateau kind of location, the natural wind would blow like, say you nuked France, because of course you would. Say you nuke France next to Switzerland, the wind isn't blowing it, 4,000 feet or 10,000 kilometers uphill into Switzerland, not for the most part. I mean, particles will eventually settle to the ground and maybe get cycled in a few rains, but a lot of the heavy damage is going to sweep right around the edges of those mountains and pour down into mainland Italy and then over into the Balkans. And so actually it's a very interesting location. I mean, I was actually thinking of that when I was writing, again, tying it back into our stuff, when I was writing the Wasteland Survival Guide, the chapter we still haven't released yet, which was Mar Harbor from that we performed at Everfree Northwest, about Aris Island and our hippogriff sea ponies. And, that was part of the plot, where it's like only the harbor itself was actually that radiated. Deep underwater in the sea Equestria was fine, because they were deep enough where you really can't permeate with too much radiation in open water. I mean, it doesn't radiate the water, but not like... it's not like, I guess, like hanging in a cloud, like over the sea. And then you had the actual Mount Eris itself, which is too high. You don't have as much dense, like, fallout against the ground. So, anyway, and obviously it's a play on, Far Harbor, where it's like a cloud, a fog that's along the ground too. So, I was just watching the Red Letter Media about the mist. I know it's different than the fog, but I always think of the two together because it's a very similar sort of environmental premise. It's very neat. I'm sorry. What are you going on about, chat? I know I'm kind of rambling, but this is how I decompress. Like normally this would be me, talking to like a bro or friend or something, but tiny islands of Bermuda are extremely radiated because the U.S. still uses them for nuke testing. Oh no, poor Bermuda. Yeah, that was the tricky thing with some of those islands. Like, obviously everyone knows about the U.S. Pacific Island holdings, where we've got, the Inoak Atoll or Johnston Atoll that got nuked the shit out of over a couple of decades because, it's very far remote from the American population. Because even in the middle of the Nevada desert, then you had the burgeoning city of Las Vegas, there in the warm glow of the nuclear weapons testing, and they had to stop doing that in the Nevada range. So they started taking all the big ones out to sea. Or you could do what Britain did and test them in Australia, which was totally not an offensive against the emus, that's for sure. But yeah, I didn't know that about Bermuda. That's unfortunate. I know there's nuclear waste too has been dumped in a lot of coastal areas. Like outside of San Francisco Bay, there's a small chain of islands called the I think they're pronounced Farallones or Farallones Islands, where it's almost like at the mouth of the bay, like by the Golden Gate, but just 30 miles out at sea. And they're just tiny little whatever islands. There's like one lighthouse from like the Spanish days or something. And right now, just like all the islands, they're now wildlife sanctuaries. But back in like the 60s and 70s, they were also a nice place to just dump a ton of nuclear waste. And so there's like 100,000 barrels of nuclear waste that were dropped right there at the mouth of San Francisco Bay, which seems really like poor planning to me. Like, I don't know. We have all these like outlier islands like Wake Island. Wake Island is like one small horseshoe of land, and then there's nothing for like 700 miles in all directions. That's one reason Wake Island was so important in the Pacific Theater, is it was a necessary landing strip back when planes couldn't fly that far. And so, you know, drop them like halfway between Wake Island and Hawaii, or Wake Island and Johnston Atoll. Don't dump a bunch of nuclear waste right outside of San Francisco, where you had the port of Alameda and port of Oakland as one of the top 5 major shipping routes in the U.S. Ridiculous. We do use it for secret stuff. Cheap islands. Yeah, I know. I mean, there's some places you can just buy cheap islands. That's kind of cool. Yeah, nukes should get the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, it's just one of those weird things. And, you know, in another sick way, it's kind of like chemical weapons, too. If you go back earlier, like World War I, you know, that saw a lot of use of mustard gas and horrible things like that. But ever since then, it's become very like, you know, a war crime, which the whole idea of like war crimes is so odd sounding, you know, on the face of it. But it's like, yeah, it's like almost like that's crossing an extra line. You know, it's not so much that you want to take pieces of our territory or kill our inhabitants or whatever, but like a war crime, that's a whole nother level of bad. And yeah, and I mean, the U.S. and Russia and all of them had pretty decent stockpiles until we started destroying them, which is good. Yeah, less of them in general, but at the same time, it's the same as nuclear weapons. It's Pandora's box. Once it's been invented, you can't uninvent it, and that's actually one reason I really tried to set up the Ice Mare story the way I did, because I really wanted to have that option. It's like, you know, what if you actually did have the choice? What if you were the last person that could turn the key closed on something like that? What would it be? You know, probably 99% of people would say nuclear weapons or, you know, kill Hitler or something like that. But it's interesting if you think about that. I mean, what if you did that for something that wasn't necessarily like obviously horrible? What if it was like ships, like the concept of like large transoceanic sailing ships or whatever, like someone just made it so that couldn't be invented, or that's something that couldn't happen. You know, a lot of world history would be vastly different. Like all the, you know, prehistoric settlers of the whatchamacallit, like Pacific Islands, you know, the islands would be basically uninhabited unless something like evolved on their own there, like the what was that tribe of hominids, the short ones, the Homo florensis, you know, maybe it'd be things like that, where each island would have its own super isolated, like individually evolved, like bottleneck population. That would be fascinating to look at. You know, if you then extended that, like, you know, another 100,000 years or 800,000 years, like the Time Machine books, and then you get yourself some what are they called in those books? Not Mogwais, but Marauders or something, where, you know, you've got the smart upper class and then you've got like the violent working like drone warrior class. Back in the chat we have secret stuff. Would anyone mind if we nuked France? Well, I mean, that's a lot of good wine, like wine and stuff. I'm sure someone would miss that. Then again, from what I hear from my fellow, you know, of course, this is probably just Californians talking, but Californians say that the Napa Valley, you know, California wine country is pretty good too. No, you've got to have France. You got to have Macron, you know, riding around in his little tank, being Mr. Jupiter, which is pretty great. Oh God. Oh yeah, now everyone's talking about war crimes. Yeah, I mean that's a whole other black hole of conversation. It's like, if you really want to talk about chemical weapons, I mean, even a lot of American soldiers are still saying they're suffering effects of Agent Orange or Gulf War syndrome, which a lot of people think is still in their heads. But it's like, I don't know, like Desert Storm wasn't one of those wars to have like a giant psychological impact on people. It was honestly a really quick operation. It's like, okay, Saddam invaded too much of Iraq, or of Kuwait, so we got to drive them back up into like mainland Iraq and let Kuwait be Kuwait because they're friendly American Gulf city-state. And so it was like a simple operation: drop American shit into Kuwait and push Saddam and the Iraqi army back up into Baghdad. I mean, what was it, like 6 weeks? This is one of the shortest, easiest wars in American history. Just comparing that to any of our other Middle East campaigns is like night and day. Compare that to modern Iraq war, which is, can we even count it as over? I don't even know anymore. Or Afghanistan, which definitely isn't over. Or Syria. And it's like, but during Desert Storm, they said, some people had this like weird Gulf War syndrome where I forget what the symptoms were. It's like similar to fibromyalgia, where it's like just like nebulous pain throughout the body and exhaustion, I think. And then a lot of people point out that there was a lot of use of things like white phosphorus, and then there was also depleted uranium rounds, because one of our biggest tank killer things in the arsenal is the I love the make name of the company, Fairchild Republic. Fairchild Republic A-10 Lightning IIs. That's the Warthog planes that are like just like, they're one of the cheapest planes in the Air Force, and the Air Force keeps trying to get rid of them because the Air Force hates anything that doesn't burn money in a giant pit. But it's like, these A-10s are so simple. I mean, yeah, they don't go like Mach 5 at 10,000, 100,000 feet. But they're so great at what they do. But one of the things of what they do is that their front nose gun, I think they're Vulcan guns, 20 millimeters. One of the main types of ammunition used for those, and what makes them such a good tank killer, is they use depleted uranium rounds, which is, let me see if I remember right. I think the depleted uranium is the U-238. The 238 is the common one. The 235 is the nuclear bomb one, and that's enriching uranium is just like a filtering process. Is you're taking all the very dangerous isotope, which is I think U-235, and then you're putting that shit in bombs and reactors, and then you're filtering out just the dense lead-like material, which is uranium U-238, which I think they used to call yellow cake or something, and then they just melt that shit into like lead, like a bullet, a giant 20 millimeter slug. And the benefit of that is that it's one of the densest, hardest materials that isn't like, isn't a, what are they called? Actinides? Like a nuclear, like, radioactive, decomposing element. So you can, you can take tons of ammo of that shit and just, blow your way through titanium plate armor and steel plate armor and all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, the A-10s, too, which have, like, redundant flight control systems. It's got, like, I think 2 electronic systems and 1 purely mechanical. So there was one recent story where, like, one woman pilot, it blew off, like, half of a wing. Where it looked like she was just flying with 1 wing in the damn thing, but she was able to land it back at whatever airbase, and she was fine. It's, like, crazy shit. Anyway, long road around that is that a lot of people think that possible use of uranium ammunition in the Gulf War, Desert Storm, and other conflicts like that might have more long-term effects that people aren't realizing or, aren't taking a full account for. So, yeah, it's a lot of, we can get away with it because we're the biggest, which sucks. I hate that. That's why I'm always ranting against all the warmongering neocon crap, but it's, yeah, it's unfortunate. Gotta stop that. No more neocon shit. Every government has taboos. I mean, yeah, that's a bit of it too. It's like, you know, if you take any government and start like fine-tooth combing it, if it's a nation of a certain size threshold in the last, 1,000 years or 2,000 years, there's probably some dirt in there. Even if it's not that big, even if you have just a little tiny island government or whatever, like your, Vanuatu, then you could probably find something that's relatively scaled to be horrible. Like, maybe there was a massacre of like 800 people, but maybe your island's only like 10,000 people, so that's like a giant chunk of your population, where that would be, an American equivalent would be like 40 million people killed or something. So I feel like that kind of stuff needs to be accounted for too. It's complicated. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just rambling. If you guys have Fallout questions or nuclear horse questions, I try to label the stream appropriately so people understand what they're in for. This is just me trying to forget about my week. Oh my god, it's only been an hour? Feels like it's been 3 hours. Let's find some more Rare Jack pictures. I downloaded like everything this guy's ever drawn when I first discovered it. Some of them are actually kind of lewd, so I probably can't show those, but you should look up the artist. He's pretty great. What's this dude's name? Questionable artist? Oh no, questionable is the no, I think the artist is TCN 1205. That's Tango Charlie November 1205. I think that's the artist. Yeah. It's good shit. That's what I'm saying here. This is great stuff. You want to follow oh yeah, there it is. TCN 1205. You want to follow this guy. Cuz this is great stuff. Oh, there we go. Ain't that great? And you know what? We'll throw one of these in the middle if we can. Okay. Anyway, can we summon other members? I can pull up the Discord and see if anyone else is around. Is pretty impromptu, I admit, and not everyone has my offset Fridays off like me. So, yeah. But really, even though, like I've said, the Confession 7 is coming along fantastically. We're just waiting on a few things. I can't tell you how excited I am that we're finally so close to releasing it that I can almost taste it, and it's gonna be so great. Let's try if we can put this on top. Oh yeah, there we go. And then we'll move you to the side. There we go. Nope, not quite. Damn. Okay. You're gonna make me shrinkify it. Fudge. It's not gonna let me stack any more of these. It's just too many good stuff. Pictures. Okay. Okay, pulling up Discord. Discord chat. All right, and let me turn on my audio there so they can actually hear me. Hello, Discord. Hello, Discord. There we go. Okay. Anyone want in on live stream? There we go. Okay. And then people can come on in as they please. And I should hear something if they do. So, otherwise, everyone's busy. I know it's BronyCon weekend, I think. And Needle is busy with her, her lover doing stuff. So, that's one thing. I don't know what James is doing. He's probably, busy with his own stuff. I know he's been putting a lot of Terminal Secrets drips on the channel. I haven't had the time to actually watch any of those, but I'm sure those are interesting. People are working on blueprints for a Robo Pony. That's always great. I remember when I was like settling on the concept of the Sentinel droids and how I would integrate them into our stories and stuff. In that first drawing I did, which I think I've showed before, I drew a lot of the look idea from My Life as a Teenage Robot, which is appropriate, of course. Very 50s inspired Art Deco kind of look, the way I think it would have looked if we actually had an animated series of our stuff, which would be so much better than normal Fallout Equestria. Not getting a lot of Discord takers. It's just as well. It's the what else is going on in the news today? I'm behind on season stuff too. Like, I know there was the season 8 break where apparently some kind of Chrysalis shit happened and like all the main 6 are like discordified, like they're mean 6 now. Like, so I have no idea how that happened, but I gotta catch up on that. I'm actually finally been rebuilding my my horse video collection too, because I had a few issues 2 weeks ago where my internet was spotty, which is frustrating because my new internet's been much better than Comcast, but I don't know, there were a couple of like downtimes where I like lost it for maybe not the night, but like the last hour of the night that I planned to be awake, and that was kind of unfortunate. So I sort of had another surge of, gotta have offline mode of everything. And so I got seasons 3 through 6 of 4 through 6. I already had 3 of Pony on DVD because apparently they're only on DVD for some reason, which makes no sense. They have the 1080p like source versions, put out a Blu-ray already, but no, they're only on DVD. And I started out buying the DVD, so I feel like I got to complete the set. And then at the end of it all, at the end of the series, then I'll buy the Blu-ray super crazy box set. And I got I did get the Equestria Girls on Blu-ray because those are already out, because that's fun. Those are already fun. And, also, the whole reason, too, I was thinking about physical media was because in the twatter.com, I've been seeing Kevin Conroy, who I follow, has been tweeting about Batman, the animated series. And they're coming out with that on a Blu-ray, like, whole series box set, which looks awesome. Long time ago, when he came to an anime convention, Kevin Conroy, I got him to sign my Batman animated series season 1 box set, and then also his Arkham City game. His Arkham City game. I mean, it's kind of his. He was Batman, and that was pretty sweet. So so I'm excited for that. Of course, that was a big driver to get me into Batman related things over the years, and really, even as a kid, I really, besides the storytelling and, the gothic nature, and then Batman Beyond, which got me into, like, early cyberpunk kind of stuff, the music was incredible. And the, just, I don't know, the feel, like, that was a big early, like, kind of creative inspiration for me when I was really starting to do creative things of my own. I was always like, because it was like a stark, simplistic style in some of the backgrounds and stuff, but they always were very effective the way they played, and that sort of like the aesthetic, that like 40s, 50s kind of hybrid Art Deco aesthetic. Like, you think of things like I think it's called Heart of Steel. It was the 2-part episodes where it was Batman and it was the computer AI, where it's this like giant like warehouse size like computer AI thing, but it was making synths, essentially. It was making these robots and copying people in Gotham and sending them out in their place. I think it was called like Hardak or something. That was the name of the AI. And just that kind of storytelling and like the feel of it was so cool. I love that. I love that kind of concept. Yeah, but that doesn't come out for a little while longer. I think you can pre-order it, but I haven't gone around to that yet. What I did get is another thing that's just recently come out, which is Avatar: The Last Airbender Blu-ray full series set, because one of the main writers for that show, Aaron Ehasz, he has a new show coming to Netflix soon. It's called I think it's called like the Dragon Brothers or Dragon something, and it looks very not similar per se, but it's like, yeah, another kind of big like adventure kind of series like that. And that I'm excited about that, because that's because he was one of the reasons that Avatar, I think, ultimately worked as a show, because obviously without him writing at the helm, you get Legend of Korra, and that's like night and day when you think about the writing, at least when I think about the writing. Then again, I don't think Korra was planned out start to finish like The Last Airbender probably was. Korra really feels like every season they were just, see what happens. Because obviously at the end of the first season, it feels like a series wrap almost. She's able to get in touch enough with her spirituality that she's able to save herself, bring back her other avatar forms, or the other three bendings that freaking Cowboy Bebop wasn't able to take away from her, Steve Bloom. But then and then she ends up with Mako too, which I like that. That's a good ending. I mean, what's her name is great too, but like I felt bad for Mako, because it's like first it doesn't work out with Korra, and then it doesn't work out with Asami either, and then Korra and Asami get together, and it's like, I don't know, it's like getting like triple cucked, which is really unfortunate. Even Bolin ends up with what's her name, the Steel Girl, which is great for him, because I also felt bad for Bolin when Korra kind of used him to get back at Mako. So, oh god, and then I think it was after Korra season 2 when the network canceled it for showing on television. And then that's where they sort of had the Netflix, I think it was Netflix, contract come into play, where then the last 2 seasons of Korra were like on nick.com/streaming services. So that was interesting. Oh yeah, someone's bringing up in the chat, there is something weird going on with Stan Lee, I've heard too, the Marvel founder guy, Stan Lee, and I don't know myself. I haven't actually been following up on like some of the theories going around, but it sounds like, yeah, he's kind of going through some rough times. That's always one of those unfortunate things, and that's actually kind of the plot of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, where when you get old enough as like some old person, maybe you have some kind of business empire or something else, or then you have like the younger people kind of stepping in, and even you as the founder, you're getting like pushed out for one reason or another, and while you're still alive, they're wrestling all this control away from you. It's like, oh god, as an old person, that would be horrifying. That's like, that was kind of the plot of The Lost World, too, as well, of course, because Fallen Kingdom was kind of a Lost World reboot ripoff, which is fitting, I guess, considering the Jurassic World series. But yeah, just like, I couldn't imagine that, like, building some kind of empire, something great, and then someone steps in and wrests it away from you for one reason or another, and just completely corrupt it for in one way or another. That would be horrifying. Some people are wondering if Stan Lee's dead. I don't think he's dead, is he? I mean, to be honest, we're lucky if he isn't, because he is like 97, I think. I mean, for any guy to live even into your 80s is a blessing, because yeah, we got a lower life expectancy than the average person. So, yeah, so no, I hope things are all right. Especially for someone like Stan Lee, because now this is this is almost like another golden age for Marvel, thanks to Kevin Feige, who just took the entire Marvel universe and like he just master planned it into this cinematic universe that has no parallel. I mean, there's nothing like this in history, even with big franchises like 007, where it essentially just reboots every 5 movies. This is 20 movies and shows and TV and Amazon and Netflix all interlinked together in an exceptional way. Like, honestly, I don't know how Feige doesn't just go around every other day just like, you know, staring at an invisible timeline in front of his eyes being like, okay, you know, we have 1 year until this is supposed to happen to, you know, the Dark Elves and the Thor continuity, and once that happens, then it triggers over here in the Captain America continuity, and then that has an after effect over here in Ant-Man, and it's like, God, that's just... I mean, and it really seems like, you know, he is the linchpin. And that's one reason DC hasn't been able to copy the formula is they're playing catch up and it's so obvious in all the worst ways. And B, they've never had a Kevin Feige like voice or like personality like holding it all together in the middle. Like it sounds like, I guess, one of the original or one of the better DC writers, is it Jeff Johns? Jeffrey Johns or something. I'm saying that YouTuber's name now, aren't I? The movie review guy. But and the DC writer guy, it seems like Warner Brothers was trying to bring him in and make him like a new Kevin Feige figure to like, you know, guide what's left of the DC universe ship into into steady waters. But we'll see what comes of that. This must be weird with the Rare Jack on screen. I don't know. It's pretty sweet though. I don't see too many people complaining. Let's see what else I've got. Oh, that's too lewd. That's can't show that on a Christian podcast. Here, this one isn't as lewd. Let's throw up one of these. And then one of... Oh, see, now that's just adorable. And this guy's name is in most of the shots, so hopefully everyone can see. Okay, so, what were we talking about? Old people losing control. Like, I don't know. I couldn't imagine that. That would be horrifying, especially something as big as something like Marvel. Or honestly, I think too, a lot of the time, like what it must be like as fucking George Lucas. Because you remember after he sold Star Wars, George Lucas had like 1 or 2 years of kind of like trying to do other things and kind of move into other movie markets, and then he kind of like gave up. I don't think he knows what he wants to do anymore. I think he's just kind of like resting on his laurels, and I don't know what he makes of everything that's going on right now. That must be something else too. Since we've run out of ideas, let's discuss old British sitcoms. What do you want to talk about? I haven't seen a lot of British television. I've seen a handful of the Monty Python movies, and then IT Crowd. I've seen a few more modern British cinema. So it's like IT Crowd was pretty good. That's one series I watched start to finish with Moss and all those guys. that was pretty funny. A Steven Universe. I don't know Steven Universe. I saw that up until I want to say it was like episode 74, and then I didn't keep following it. I know it seems like it sounds like Granite finally got married to herself, which is great. So congratulations on that. That was it seems like cheating. I feel like once you've already once you've already combined your internal essences into like its own sentient being, you're pretty much already there, right? Like, that's one of those, like, you know, literally just a piece of paper kind of deals. But, you know, that's great. I'm glad everyone likes a wedding. How can you not enjoy a wedding? You go, you have some free food, you know, one couple are getting really, like, celebratory and stuff. And that's pretty sweet. I'm seeing... I'm talking about Blackadder and Faulty Towers. I don't know Blackadder. I only know the extent to which Hugh Laurie was an interesting like foil character in Blackadder, and then that was am I saying it right? Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean. It was Mr. Bean as the main guy. I think the premise was interesting though, right? Where it was the Mr. Bean character, the Blackadder is like the family, and so it follows like whatever, you know, family member he's playing for that episode or series or whatever, and like their hijinks throughout history, it seemed like. So that's kind of neat. I like the concept. A lot of really interesting. That's probably one of the harder things in the entertainment industry that I've seen, is when you see the potential for some kind of concept and then it dies in the water for one reason or another, and you're like, oh my gosh, you could have been so cool, but then whatever happened, the studio killed it, you ran out of money, maybe a character died, very unfortunately, like Heath Ledger. Like, I'd love, if I could go to Portal, I'd love to go to a universe where Heath Ledger, you know, is still alive, and he, you know, Christopher Nolan went on to make, like, a whole separate trilogy of Batman and Joker movies. Like, honestly, if he were still alive and became a major villain character, would then that have been enough for Christopher Nolan to, like, sort of lead a DC combined universe series, where instead of doing something stupid like giving control to Zack Snyder, you could have had someone like Nolan. Maybe he could have brought his brother in, and we would have had him, and I think Jonathan already, like, helped him write most of that stuff anyway. Him and Jonathan and Lisa Joy, you know, our Westworld friends, and they all just wrote their own DC universe in the Nolan style. I would love to see what he could have done with, like, Superman, like, in full, in proper, not like Man of Steel. Because Man of Steel, there's way too many Zack Snyder influences, where it's just like, it's just unfortunate. I just, or like, I watched that documentary too, was it Kevin Smith who made the documentary? Because I know he wrote one of the scripts where it was about the, Superman Lives movie from, like, the turn of the 2000, where after, you know, Batman and Robin kind of failed, they're like, okay, fuck that, let's try Superman again. And so it was either him or some other characters that were, like, really trying to pitch an interesting Superman, like, series reboot, and that was the one too where they had cast Nick Cage as Superman, which is incredible. And now, actually, I think everyone knows, well, maybe not everyone, but now the joke, like, resolution of that is that Nick Cage is playing Superman in the new Teen Titans Go movie. He's finally playing Superman in a theatrical release movie. Teen Titans Go. Oh my gosh. People making their way through Monk now. Oh yeah, I remember Monk. That was I never watched any of it, but you know, there's a lot of good situational comedy from a hypochondriac, definitely. The first series was in medieval times, and the last series was set during World War I. Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, that's, like, you know, enough where it's still, like, interesting history. Because then once you would have gotten into, like, World War II, then it's, you know, party's kind of over. It's too recent to be, like, you know, to really exploit for the comedy. Discord chat sucked. Was born in the 80s. Nice. You ever watch Monk? Yeah, no, I haven't. I've only seen commercials, essentially, for Monk. I do remember the guy, though. I forget the actor's name. I remember when he came to House as well, speaking of British sitcoms, or British actors. Anyway, I remember when he came to House too, as he was the surgeon, I think, or he was like a plastic surgeon, and then House brings him on as like something or other because he had to get out of Hollywood because of his wife or something. But yeah, that was an interesting character. Yeah, I know. Teen Titans Go. It's very unfortunate. I feel the same way. I mean, honestly, Teen Titans, the original show, was a little bit too cutesy for my taste. Whenever it went into those weird kind of like anime moments where they're like, you know, the blocky like panty and stocking looking characters, I'm like, it just kind of grinded on me. Like, you know, you could have a normal show with like, you know, with the great Puffy Ami Yumi theme song and stuff, without having to make it so weird. Because I think the key word is it's a break in tone, and it's the same problem with like proper animes too. Like I remember when I first discovered Full Metal Alchemist. After, you know, as a kid, you know, I watched like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z and Digimon and like kid animes, but like kind of the first like normal or like, you know, young adult animes like Full Metal Alchemist, you'd still have those scenes where then it's like, you know, it's Alphonse or Edward, and they become like this blocky, like, you know, this blocky, like cheaply animated character stomping around in a fully painted background scene and like normal animated characters on the front. And it just like, it didn't do it for me. You know, there's like, it's almost like an uncanny valley where you can drift a little bit off point. But in my opinion, one of the better things with anime is that the characters, for the most part, stay within a certain range of like believable motions, because then you have that sort of that reality weight that gives, you know, anime a little bit a better edge to drama. Like think of it if you grew up with Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like comparing Blue Eyes White Dragon to Toon Blue Eyes White Dragon. Or, you know, if you grew up with YouTube and you have the little Karibo series, it's like the Americanized Blue Eyes White Dragon. It's like, it's shit. It's shit. That's why anime's better. That's why you have so many, you know, weeaboos in the Western world that are enamored with, you know, Japanese animation. Oh, God. And so, anyway, so that was my complaint about the original Teen Titans. I feel like the really good story moments, like, if they had written the entire Teen Titans series the way they wrote the, what was the name of it? The End of the World arc, where it's Raven and it's her 16th birthday or whatever, and so her crazy evil demon dad is gonna use her as a vessel to, you know, bring hell on earth and and all this other creepy stuff, and then, you know, she's like split into all these personalities and stuff. It's like, that was so good. Yeah, you know, if the whole show was written like that, or like Batman Beyond or any of those. Like, I get the idea that Teen Titans was supposed to be like for a younger demographic. So it was like, you know, they make the show starring adults like Teen Titans or like Batman and Justice League for the teenagers and whatever. And then they make the show about teenagers for tweens and younger. And it's like, damn it. Teen Titans was so good, the original, if not for some of those sillier moments. You know, you could add more stuff like with Robin and Starfire too. That would have been great. You know, poor Starfire. You know, she was just like, same thing with Curie in Fallout 4, where you have that sort of that innocence, that sort of like, you know, that happy-go-lucky, like, you know, see everything on the bright side in a modern world that's just so attractive. It's so nice. See someone who hasn't been like, you know, someone who hasn't been burned to like a dull crisp by existence. Let's see what chat's talking about. They shot the Red Baron in the face. Ooh, good shot. Okay, so when I'm talking, so yes, I mentioned panty and stocking. I'm talking about the art style, obviously. And no, I don't watch that. I was like I saw one episode, but mainly I remember when it first, I don't know, maybe an English translation or something came out where all the memes were happening. And so I remember seeing the memes of them left and right. And half the reason too is was it the stalking chick, the blue-haired one? You see her picture is always confused in with Twilight pictures as well. So that's a whole thing. But anyway, it's just trying to get across the art style, that concept of the over cutesy. You know what this is like? This is like in RWBY, is it the first episode or season 1 at the very least, where then you had that whole scene of where RWBY goes all chibi and, floats off screen, and then you had poser animation Yang reach off screen and pull her back in, and she's normal RWBY. Like, that was good framing. I appreciate the cinematography and construction of that scene, but the whole concept of her becoming the little floating creep ball thing in the first place, it's fourth wall breaking. Any tension or drama in a scene instantly evaporates when something like that happens. So, if you play it well enough and smart enough where that's only happening in, like, comedic scenes, like that was, admittedly, and it's used very sparsely, that's fine. But what I remember of Teen Titans was that they would drip things like that into otherwise very interesting or dramatic storylines, and it just completely fuck it up. Just completely cornhole. So, in the chat, I love a lot of the more traditional or historical animes. Yeah, I do too. Like, just I think, what part of it is for me is that at least for the most part, Japan hasn't abandoned the whole concept of 2D animation. And that's what's so frustrating too about I heard a rumor too. I don't know if this is true, but I heard a rumor that, ever since he took over all animation at Disney, or when he did, John Lasseter used that Winnie the Pooh movie from 2012 or whatever, used it as an excuse to completely nuke the 2D animation within Disney. And just there won't be any more 2D animated Disney movies at the very least. And just I don't know if that's true or not, but that he chose a specific release date for it as an excuse to kill that whole side of their studio and turn everything into the Pixar looking Frozen Tangled shit. And it's don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Tangled and I enjoyed half of Frozen and separate segments around there. I do not want every single movie to be like that. I'll be honest, I'd take a whole bunch more movies like Titan AE, where, it's year 2000 level CGI and the rougher, Don Bluth kind of animation, rather than just everything looking like Frozen. Because honestly, at this point, it looks so sterilized. It looks like they load up, Pixar.exe, and there's a giant, like a Sims studio maker, and they just scroll through and they build the character and drop them on scene and then start a screen capture. A lot of the magic is starting to get lost on me. And I know behind the scenes there are things like Rapunzel's hair in Tangled, where there's a lot of really great advances and art and stuff going into it. But then you look at things like the storyboards for Tangled, and, it's a very Disney-esque rough style that, probably those storyboarders have been drawing for 30 years, since the 90s and stuff, and I'm God, it looks great, just color and ink that. I would have been happy with it. Honestly, it might have had a longer lasting impression, because, I don't know, they're kind of because of Disney, or because of the sort of historical weighted nostalgia of Disney and that style of animation, it looks so good. I know it's hard to make. I know rotoscoping is a pain and all that, but it's you look at Japan too in the 80s and 90s, that sort of early stage anime, or not early stage, but sort of, I don't know, that crest of anime where you had things like Akira and Ghost in the Shell and a lot of animes that I'd never even watched, or that was the Gundam age too, where it's just the level of detail, on the electronics and the technology, look incredible. And you just see how, I don't know, it seems like in some ways, animation itself, the very physical on-screen things have gotten simplified, while some of the storylines have gotten more complex, and that's admirable. So sometimes you have a really good synthesis of the two, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is great, And then you have things like Steven Universe and Adventure Time, where the animation is a lot looser. It doesn't have to be super dense or complex, but you could get a lot of really interesting storytelling in there. And it's just, I hate the fact that we have to choose. I'm seeing in the chat, Titan AE was my shit. It was my shit too. I love Titan AE. I hate the fact that that kind of like killed Don Bluth's career, because I like a lot of Don Bluth properties. My problem with Bluth was always that his stuff erred on the side of being too dark and morose. That was one thing Disney animation especially was very good at, was the brightness of color, or maybe the contrast. Like, Don Bluth was better at writing some like heartstring tugging moments in things like Land Before Time or some of the other stuff, but it's the actual, or All Dogs Go to Heaven. There you go. But everything had a little bit too much of a, I want to say, Victorian feel, and I'm saying that because you look at old like Victorian houses, and everything has a very dark, very rich color palette. You know, if you see a green, you're not seeing like a bright, like Dr. Seuss green. You're seeing like a dark emerald, and then you've got a crushed velvet, and then a navy blue. Everything is just dark, period. And then you go over to the House of Mouse, or go back, rather, to the House of Mouse, and you've got things like Fantasia, and you've got things like, Princess and the Frog. That's also another unfortunate thing. One of the last big 2D movies Disney did, Princess and the Frog, had incredible animation. You see some of the magic effects, like Friends on the Other Side song with Dr. Fusilier and all of that, and just the colors and the brightness. It's just such great contrast and composition. It's awful that like that was the end of their 2D animation. Or even, besides Don Bluth, you look at another set of like Disney separatists, DreamWorks animation. You remember, long before DreamWorks just became, you know, the Shrek studio. And of course, I like some of their newer stuff too, like How to Train Your Dragon. But, you know, before DreamWorks just became Shrek Incorporated, they had some really solid 2D animations from the late 90s. You had like El Dorado, The Road to El Dorado, which was such a great like buddy movie above anything else. Just the dynamic between Miguel and Tulio was so great. Them sailing across the new world in a little ship and discovering the city of gold and their gods and stuff. Hilarious. And then you sprinkle in a few Elton John songs for good measure. And then, you know, obviously I was raised in a good Protestant Christian household, so we watched the Prince of Egypt a lot. And the Prince of Egypt, I mean, you know, of course it's a religious story, but the animation and the music was incredible. They put so much effort into that, and in all aspects of it. I mean, the style looked great, the color looked great. Obviously, it was kind of a flash in the pan, because then Joseph King of Dreams didn't really capture the same effect. But it's like, just the idea of that 2D animation, and then yeah, I think it was Fox Animation that produced Titan AE, and it just was like, I don't know. I lament the death of 2D animation. I want more of that classical stuff again. I want more, and I think that's a big reason why a lot of modern youth, like millennials and Gen Zs, really enjoy anime, is because that sort of quality and that, and what anime too always took a more serious approach to some of their storytelling too. Like, you know, Avatar: The Last Airbender is called like an American anime, almost tongue in cheek, but it's not necessarily the fact that it's, you know, it's called that as, you know, an American produced show. It's the fact that anime has this quality to it, or at least anime that crosses the Pacific into the greater Western world, has a certain depth of either storytelling or humor or interconnected world building that people find very compelling. And I think especially in a post-Game of Thrones Netflix era, people are remembering that because, you know, you think of the 80s and 90s, a lot of these shows were very, so to speak, monster of the week. You had the occasional super hit like Twilight or X-Files, where X-Files was a monster of the week kind of format, but it had this greater story that they really unraveled over the course of 9 seasons that, you know, a lot of the hardcore X-File fans, like my mother and kind of me to some extent, really loved. And anime seemed to do that a lot better, or for a lot longer up until the modern television age than American television. Whereas American television, everything was sitcoms, where you had your Home Improvements, you had your and the thing is too, a lot of these were sort of interconnected stories, but even groundbreaking things like South Park and The Simpsons, there's no continuity. And you can watch whatever episode it goes on in syndication, because that was sort of the way the production system was, the network system that rolls out these shows. And then too, I'm going to piss off some people by mentioning this, you think of shows like Firefly. You think of those shows, those gems, where someone really did have an interesting idea for a universe of something that they wanted to build within a television context. And then you take the producers at Fox, and they show something that isn't the pilot as the first episode. So no one has any idea what's going on. And then eventually you show the pilot, and maybe the people don't care because they already didn't like the episode where they didn't know what was going on. And then they roll out the rest of the season like they don't give a shit because they didn't. And then the show gets canceled. But within that context of the people who were able to absorb it for what it was, then you have this burgeoning fan base that like understood what the value was there. They understood the diamond that was buried in coal by, you know, fat cats who didn't give a shit. They're just selling airtime to Coca-Cola and, you know, other big ad space. That's another reason too, I'm so glad we're approaching the post-television age. The whole concept of advertisement as a method of funding is horse shit. I would rather pay $30 a month for Netflix and never see another advertisement again. I've thought a long time over this. I've thought a long time about getting YouTube Red just so I don't have to watch any goddamn ads ever on YouTube ever again, like on my phone, because of course on my computer I kind of have ad block sometimes. If it's like horse creators or someone I know who has monetization, I'll usually open up in I think it's Chrome where I don't have ad block, and it's Firefox I do. So I'll make sure I watch it with ads for those, because I want to help fellow, you know, little YouTubers like myself and like us. But for the big stuff, when you're watching a Vivo channel, no, I don't need to watch your advertisement. The song itself is the advertisement for, you know, the album, probably, whatever you're listening to. The whole concept of advertisement as a mode of money making is so corrupt and disgusting. I mean, you don't have to go back to a show like Mad Men to understand that the whole concept of advertising is built on a leftover evolutionary trait in the human brain, where it's like seeing something often enough makes you drawn toward it, where, you know, it's a combination of a whole bunch of other functionaries in our brains, where it's like, if you're familiar with something, you know that something is not a threat, so that something is more safe in your mind than something foreign. So let's say, for instance, you see a can of Coca-Cola. After years and decades of conditioning, you have a pretty good idea of what's inside that can of Coca-Cola. There's a certain amount of sugar, or high fructose corn syrup if you're an American, which is a whole nother shitty thing. But you see a can of Coca-Cola, and you know there's a certain amount of sugar and a certain amount of flavor. That's going to be good for your tongue. Yeah, and you'd appreciate that. Now, let's say, for instance, you see a can of RC Cola next to it. And now a lot of people probably have no idea what that is, but it's sort of like a generic. Not necessarily a generic, it's sort of like a localized chain, but it's like there's so many more layers of unknowns there. You have no idea the company, you have no idea if that's the only one, like some random person just created a can and wrote RC Cola on it, and then on the inside it's like hydrofluoric acid. So there's all these questions that you just don't know. So your brain, siding with that safety factor that's built in for a number of good reasons over years of natural selection, you go with what's familiar. You go with the Coca-Cola between the two. And so advertising is just hot wiring people's brains to sell shit. And it's like, at some point you get sick of it. At some point you're like, no, I know beyond the monkey brain, I know I hate this for other reasons, for more philosophical reasons that I don't want to give Coca-Cola any more of my money. You know, for whatever reason you want, or for whatever show you want, or whatever. And it's like, just the whole concept of ads as a money system. That's why honestly I think things like Kickstarter and Patreon and stuff have taken off so spectacularly in the modern age, because especially all of us people in our 20s and 30s growing up in that generation, the end of the advertisement generation, and you know the ad not the instance, but like the adpocalypse on like YouTube and all these internet sites where you go on a web page and it's not just one sidebar where there's ads, it's a giant pop-up. And then it's not just a giant pop-up, but it's a video pop-up. So you have to wait 4 seconds for the video to load, and then it shows you a 15-second clip of some shitty car that you're never gonna buy. And then once the shitty car is gone, then the video thing has to close, and then the page has to reload where it won't show you the video anymore. So you've stared at the screen for 30 seconds, which sounds like not a big deal. But when you're a normal person surfing, you know, however many web pages a day, you know, let's call it like 100 pages a day. If you surf the internet for an hour at night, that's insane. If you added that up with every single website, you'd go crazy and shut off your computer and go back to probably conventional television. And that's why things like ad blockers became so popular. And you remember a few years ago, there was that big internal debate with Google, which of course is part of the existing duopoly of the internet, where it's like, are we going to allow the Ad Blocker Plus browser, or are we going to block it? Are we going to let people find ways to block YouTube ads, or are we going to block that? Block the ad blocker. And it's like, it's just because people are sick of this. They would rather directly fund something they like, or fund a giant pool of money and access a service. Well, that's the thing. That's like cable. People pay for cable already, and we still had to watch 10 minutes of advertisements every half hour? Are you fucking kidding me? How did we stand this for 70 years? Or 80 years or whatever with television? It's like, this is stupid. Same with radio, too. It's like, you know, people would much rather pay, what is it, $5 a month for Pandora? You listen to all the music you ever want and never have to see a single advertisement? Or same with Spotify? That's like Hulu, because Hulu started out as a advertisement-based video content platform. And then as soon as they rolled out the ad-free option for a few extra dollars, I immediately dropped in on that. And a ton of other people did too. It's a waste of time. Time is more valuable than money. No matter what age you are, that is the ultimate truth. Time is always more valuable than money, and it gets more valuable every single second that passes, because that is another second you'll never get back. It's a second you're closer to death. It's a second you're going to be less young and less vibrant and youthful. Not that you're, you know, not that all the best days are behind you, but it's like, time is valuable. I don't want to waste my time staring at the same damn Coca-Cola ad, you know, 30 times a night just to watch, you know, just to binge watch Game of Thrones or some shit. That's another reason things like Netflix take off. You press play, you watch 15 straight hours of Stranger Things, and you have a good time for Halloween, and then you go to work the next day. Oh my God. I've been ranting for like 15 straight minutes. What are we talking about? RC is short for Royal Crown Cola. I actually didn't know that. It's actually the second cola company to have existed because Crown Royal was the alcohol, so the Royal Crown was the non-alcohol? Is that it? That's interesting. That's like I was reading about some of the Nuka World DLC storyline, or I watched the Oxhorn videos, circling back to that. I watched the Oxhorn videos about Nuka World because I never finished it. I went through most of the park, but when I couldn't find all the stupid little computers to get the Quantum Exo 1 power armor, it was just like the steel ingots. I got pissed and shut it off. And then I try to finish the DLC, and then at some point, Curie gets mad at me and leaves, And she's like, oh, we can't do this no more. We're fighting with raiders. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about them. We can genocide them when we're done. I just want to play the damn story. You know, let's side with one set of raiders, kill off the crazy psychopath ones. You know, let's side with the clown raiders that have everything spray painted like it's, you know, like it's Rust 2. And Andrew WK sitting on your back singing while you're running around in the wasteland. And then we'll kill them, Curie. Just stop being such a nag. God. But no, so no, I just never finished it. I never finished Nuka World. And it was only then watching the Oxhorn video that it's like, oh shit, we actually get to find the founder of Nuka-Cola, John Caleb Bradburton. That's kind of cool. Yeah, he's a head in a jar, just like Walt Disney. And he's tortured because he's been a head in a jar for 200 years with no one to talk to. Anyway, my connection to that was, yeah, a lot of these older colas, they go back to like the late 1800s, and they were all like pharmacists or some other thing where they're coming up with like soft drinks as a non-alcohol too. I mean, that's the whole point of why they're called soft drinks, is because hard drinks are alcohols. And some of them too have more fascinating reasons, like the inventor of Coca-Cola, which is I think that's Pemberton, John Pemberton, because the John Caleb Bradburton was like the Coca-Cola guy and the Pepsi guy combined. And then like the Dr. Pepper guy is the other famous old style soda founder guy. Anyway, the Coca-Cola guy, he was like a Confederate Army guy, and in the Civil War he got shot or something, and when they were able to save him, he didn't lose a limb or anything, but he got addicted to morphine because of the medicine. And so he was doing morphine, you know, a lot of his life, and he was trying to find ways to get off of it. And in the process, he worked with another chemist or something, and they ended up with the formula for Coca-Cola. And unfortunately, I want to say John Pemberton ended up dying anyway, because even with the, you know, the great drink flavor, it wasn't, you know, even with the little bits of cocaine that were in Coca-Cola, it wasn't enough to get him off of hard morphine. So he ended up still dying of like a morphine overdose, which is unfortunate. So, and even worse, I think his kid who received the formula, he had to sell it pretty early on because they had just family debt and other things. So it's like immediately the inventors of Coca-Cola had to sell it off to some, you know, some local big corporation there in Atlanta. But it's still Georgia made, still very Georgian. And yeah, so I'm actually having a Coke right now. that's part of where that part of the rant came from. Lots of cocaine, I know. I wonder sometimes if they still had that. Like, what if cocaine were still as easy to find in things as like caffeine? Because I mean that's how it was for a long time. In I want to say, because opioids is like a whole like range of plants, right? So you have the I think it was the opium poppies were very common in Eurasia, like, you know, all like Europe and Asia and like the Middle East and stuff, because that became, well, obviously opium wars and all that good stuff, and now modern Afghanistan, which produces shitloads of opium. But yeah, I think it was opium poppies that were like the major opioid plant in Eurasia. But then in the Americas, it was coca leaves, which had that sort of that had some kind of naturally occurring amphetamines because of whatever reason, you know. Maybe the plants just wanted to get high too, so they evolved amphetamines, which is great. And so then you had the Incan Empire, Peru. They would chew on coca leaves. Their warriors would chew on coca leaves, and it was able to like help them move further and like last longer, because it sort of, you know, it dulled everything. It dulled their hunger so they could make it a longer stretch over the Andes Mountains without eating, or it dulled their pain if they had gotten injured in a battle with another tribe or something. And yeah, it was a very diluted amount, or I'm pretty sure too at the turn of the century there, when Coca-Cola was becoming a thing, they would boil coca leaves like a tea. And so you'd have like infinitesimal amounts of the cocaine in like a tea, like caffeine in modern like soft drinks. And Obviously, caffeine wasn't as addictive as cocaine, but still, you know, caffeine has some addictive effects to it, and you still have to come down if you stop, like, drinking caffeine for some period of time. I learned that the hard way by accident. This is after I discovered migraines. Like, caffeine can definitely affect migraines either one way or another, depending on how you're wired. For me, it helps with headaches and migraines and stuff, and energy. But it's like then the, one time, I accidentally bought a thing of decaf coffee for my, like, morning coffees, and I didn't realize it for a whole week. And so I was drinking it, and I was like, man, I feel like shit. And I wasn't drinking soda for that week for whatever reason, maybe a fast or something. I just got, like, the worst migraine at the end of the week, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, oh, it's because I was coming off of caffeine, so that gave me a giant headache, and my natural migraines just amplified it. So that sucked. That was a bad weekend. That was actually around the time The Ghoul Doctor came out. That was winter of 2015 or January 2015. God. Yeah, so it's just it's interesting. You think about some of these drugs. I know there are some communities out there that don't that are at least the very fundamentals won't drink caffeine either. Like, I think Mormons. I've had a few Mormon friends, and one of their tenets was no caffeine or alcohol or anything. So it's interesting. Roy Mustang in the chat, let's put LSD in candy. Well, I mean, wasn't that the whole point of the CIA, is to make and distribute LSD in all products throughout the world? I mean, the CIA's got to do something, right? And that seems to be the only thing they've ever committed to, is putting drugs and shit. Yeah, let's change the pictures. We've been staring at this nice set of pics for a while now. You know what? Let's throw in some Glimmy. It's always a good Glimmy. This whole episode is just an advertisement for Tango Charlie November 1205. So there you go. There you go, guy. You know, watch our stuff, please. We've been advertising your art all episode. No, that one's too lewd. Gotta scroll past that one. Let's see here. I thought I saw one with Sunset too. Where is it? There it is. That's a good one. See, every once in a while, if I discover a new, like, horse artist, I'll download, like, I'll go to their Derpy Boru, and I'll just download, like, everything that they've ever drawn. and so I end up having, like, I never put these in folders properly, but then I'll just, like, well, that's so great about Derpy Boru too. You don't have to put anything in folders, because every keyword is built into the file name, which is one of the most genius things the Derpy Boru, like, tech staff ever came up with. Absolutely incredible. Can't say enough good things about the Derpy Boru guys. Or gals, you know. There's Pegasisters too, of course. Anyway, so, yeah, I always, if I find a new artist, I'll download, like, tons of their stuff, and then I'll have, like, this, because always my folders usually are, like, scrolled by date, and so then I'll have this one big section of just one artist's stuff for a while. Wasn't the CIA AIDS? Yes, I'm pretty sure the CIA invented AIDS. I mean, technically, probably not, but, you know, you could probably blame them for AIDS. CIA's kind of terrible, so you can blame them for a lot of stuff. Oh, man. It's like that Simpsons cartoon of, it was the only good Simpsons are the 90s. That's the key thing to remember, is good Simpsons were made in the 90s. And so there's the episode with the lawyer, Lionel Hutz, when it was still, rest in peace, Phil Hartman as the voice. And he had the thing like, could you imagine a world without lawyers? And then, you know, he has the thought, and it's like world peace, like every nation like dancing in a little kumbaya circle. I think of like American, at least recent American history like that, but with the CIA. It's like, oh man, we're tied up in a lot of Middle East conflicts. That really sucks. It's like, hey, remember when the CIA got us involved in Iran and we deposed their democratically elected, leader and installed the Shah, which pissed everyone off, and then they became modern Iran. That wasn't a good idea. It's like, oh yeah, you remember how Cuba is like this black hole that we have to avoid foreign policy wise because we propped up Batista and then we tried to operative word tried to kill the Castros when they were seizing control of Cuba, which is the biggest island in the Mediterranean. Sorry, the Caribbean. That was a big mistake. And it's like, one thing after another. Oh, let's get involved in Guatemala. Let's play, Spy Fair. It's like, I get that it's all secret stuff, but I feel like every 50 years, they should declassify enough things to be like, hey, this is all the good things the CIA did do to justify our existence. Please don't be mad. And it's like, I'd really love to read that list because, I'm not dumping on every individual agent, obviously, because they're probably listening to the stream right now. The regular CIA gal, fine, obviously. But it's like, at an agency level of the top floor, stuff, it's like, can you please prove to us that, you're doing shit that validates your existence? Because the public perception is it's kind of largely net negative. Very, very largely. Shit, just let Oni run things. Everyone loves the Halo games, or at least everyone I know. I love the Halo games. The Office of Naval Intelligence, which is they're the CIA of the Halo universe. That's not like that's not like a Halo thing. That's actually the first U.S. intelligence agency was the actual Office of Naval Intelligence. And they still exist too. It's just like how NCIS is like the Navy FBI. There's still ONI as a working agency, because that's the other thing with the that's another weird thing with American government is every agency has all their own separate individual crap. It can't just be probably for better or worse, it's not just one order. Could you imagine if everything were U.S. Marshals? It's U.S. Marshals were just national federal police kind of thing. Some countries have that. I think Germany and Mexico and other countries have just one very large and very official kind of national federal police force. And there's some benefits to that, because then you don't have to deal with a lot of interstate crap where then you got to get, the Texas State Troopers to talk to the Arizona Rangers and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, it's just when you have two separate bureaucracies, which is trying to fit a 13-tooth cog together with a drive belt, and there's no way for them to actually connect. It sucks when you have two separate bureaucracies trying to talk to each other. And no place is that more apparent than within the American federalist system. Old style, lowercase federalism, where you gotta have the levels of states and the levels of counties and the levels of the national government. And it's complicated. Honestly, European Union, I don't think you want this. You really don't want this. Especially not when everyone in Europe has a much deeper individual history than the US does for the most part. What is up with Cuba these days? I don't know. We got one Castro down and we still got one left, so that's a problem. Cuba's really nice though. That's the sad thing is, we were good friends with Cuba before Batista, before we propped up one dictator in lieu of another. And it's this is like the old Cold War, the only way to win is not to play. Is you don't pick favorites. You don't prop up one dictator who then becomes an enemy dictator. Because then you end up in a situation like the US. It's oh hey, the Russians are really tied up in Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires. Let's keep throwing money at these how do you pronounce it? A mujahideen? Anyway, one of them was Osama bin Laden. Oh shit, we should have given him all these money and weapons and stuff, because then he's going to drag us into Afghanistan ourselves for 20 years. And in the biggest case of situational irony that's probably ever existed in modern history. And so the CIA is like that, but 12 times with the Middle East and then the Central America and probably parts of Asia too, that's always fun. that was one of the things that was actually really compelling about the Black Ops video game, the very first one. I think I've told the story where I like Call of Duty 2, as in the second game from like when I first got my 360. That was fun as a World War II game, but I was never one of the Modern Warfare kind of guys. It never really grabbed me. It seemed very cheesy to me, to be honest. But Black Ops had a really solid, compelling, interesting storyline about that kind of era of, like, you know, asymmetrical warfare, of that kind of black operations warfare. And I found that really interesting, on top of all the really fun Rolling Stones moments. Like, one of my favorite parts of that game is where you're on one of the gunboats in Vietnam, and they've got Sympathy for the Devil playing behind you when you start laying machine gun fire on Viet Cong. That was a cool ass section. I love me Rolling Stones music. When I'm having like a 60s, 70s like Vietnam kind of era mood, I always go back to Rolling Stones. I was never a Beatles guy. Like, it's just didn't do it for me. I think of the Stones. That's good stuff. If classified stuff becomes unclassified, yeah, we'd be in trouble on all sides. That's for sure. That's why so much stuff is classified for like 100 years, which is bullshit. No. It's like, I don't know. Eventually we'll get to one like madman president that will end up getting to divulge like whole tons of shit, because the president can declassify things unilaterally, if I understand it right. I mean, they'd probably still try to find a way to stop him or her, but I'm pretty sure that's within executive power, or theoretically is within executive power. So that'd be interesting, where some president's just like, yep, there's aliens. This is what they look like. We found them in 47, and then that president probably gets assassinated real quick. But then, you know, the internet, by that point, the information's already out there. So that's kind of fun. I think what it'd be, instead of like conventional like gray aliens, like, you know, Mothership Zeta, like 50s aliens, I think it'd be something much weirder, or more like, it'd be, if there were really aliens that we've really discovered and have been hiding for 70 years, I think it would be a lot more like an SCP, to be honest, where it'd be something like, it's a race of like space bacteria that they picked up from like one of the early moon, like, you know, the Apollo 4 probe or something, and it came back down to Earth, and they found like, it's like that movie Evolution, where if you leave the bacteria in like a certain environment long enough, it metamorphosizes into, you know, bats or some shit like that. And it's like they have to keep it contained, because if it ever spread across the Earth, it could destroy the entire global ecosystem and turn everything into those bats. I mean, that's essentially the premise of Andromeda Strain in a lot of ways. In the Michael Crichton book, I think the premise was that the bacterium was something that humans had sent into the atmosphere since, like, you know, the early rocket age in the 40s, and then that evolved in like the Van Allen radiation belt and deep space from solar radiation. And so then when the Andromeda Strain itself came back down on a satellite, it was actually, you know, something new and horrible. And then the events of that book play out. That's actually one thing I always wanted to do. If I, like, when I first discovered SCPs, I'm like, I bet I could kind of write one of these in this format. I always wanted to try adapting the Andromeda Strain into an SCP format. I thought that would be kind of cool. Because, I mean, that's essentially what the SCP, like, whole story concept is. It's that kind of, like, you know, secret agency organization kind of, what did I call it? At one point in the past, I called it, facility porn, I think. Is just like, where like, you know, every Michael Crichton story has some kind of crazy facility, where you've got Jurassic Park, or you have the wildfire facility in Andromeda Strain, or you have the Sphere, or you have the what was some of the other ones? Prey, where you have the Zymos labs, and it's like, and then every one of those has some, you know, critical human error flaw go wrong, and something breaks out of a containment, and it's very, I think that's one reason I like those SCP stories, since discovering I didn't discover him first, but eventually I discovered the Volgan, and then some of those people who do the readings online that are very, very well done. If you want to check out like SCP stories at all, check out the Volgan. He does an incredible job just in his presentation style as it's a level above just like reading the outlet for a microphone, the pay documents for a microphone. He's also Irish, so when he just has his like regular videos too, it's very, very nice Irish accent. I gotta agree with Vermont on that Irish accent is very cool. Yeah, rest in peace, JFK. He almost got the information out about those glow in the dark CIA people, but didn't quite make it. Rest in peace. That's another good series if you want to check out Stephen King's 11/22/63. Well, when they converted that book to the Netflix series starring James Franco. That was actually very well done. That was a very good series. And what's even more interesting too is it's more compelling if you read the end of the book. I think it's like page 100 or like near the very end of that. That's the actual original book, 11/22/63. Where it talks about the way the alternate world unfolded if JFK lived, and the way he would have played out, because he was already sinking us into Vietnam long before crazy-ass Lyndon Johnson hit the scene. JFK was putting us deep in there, and he had some different perspectives on like social climate and stuff, and really just the way the entire history of the Cold War unfolds if you keep JFK alive up until 68, and then you have a certain election and blah, blah, blah. Very fascinating alternate history stuff. It in a lot of ways, I felt like that was Stephen King kind of playing to the famous Ray Bradbury story, Sound of Thunder, where it's a short story, but it's one of classic Bradbury, where they actually made a movie too. It didn't quite work as a movie adaptation, but it was still okay in like 2005 or whatever. But what the whole concept is, it's in the future where there's time tourism, where if you're, a super rich guy, just like African Safari, you can go back in time into a dinosaur safari, and they've got like a holographic bridge and stuff, and you can kill a dinosaur with like a laser round, where, it doesn't leave any kind of physical, like, material trace in the past, but it's like in a tar pit where a T-Rex is about to die, and you can take your laser gun and shoot your T-Rex in the head right where it was going to die in that tar pit. Doesn't change history at all. Goes into the tar, skeleton, good to go. And you get a picture and whatnot. But then, of course, right before they're about to go, it's an expedition of like, 6 people, 6 rich dudes who are about to go. That they're talking about the modern political situation in the whatever near future where they're about to do this time tourism thing. And they talk about the election of this would be very divisive right now, or rather it'd be extremely divisive 2 years ago, but they are talking about some kind of political election. And essentially the story is very short. They go, you can actually listen to the whole thing for like 20 minutes. It's like the length of the X-Raider online. And they're talking about like, dodged a bullet there. And then they go back in time, and one of the people on the time expedition, they shoot something they weren't supposed to shoot, or no, it was literally butterfly effect, where like a butterfly lands on the holographic bridge, and one of the dudes steps on it, and it was like, that wasn't good. Like, all the warnings before you go on your prehistoric safari are, don't touch anything. And so they're like, it's probably fine. And then they go back in the next portal, and they go to the future, and they're like, oh my god, oh no, the election happened the other way. And it's like, yeah, now history's forever changed, and a lot of little details. And the way the Sound of Thunder as a quote comes into play in the story is really, really interesting. So, anyway, I'm sure this is another one of those things where I'd probably delete this video if I thought enough people would see it. So, yeah. Yes, crossover SCP radio plays. Yeah, no, I mean, most of them are shorter, but one of my favorite SCPs, or rather, one of my favorite SCP stories that the Volgun has read is SCP-093. It's called the Red Sea Object, and it's essentially this disk that it opens portals to other worlds, or rather, other places in a single world, a single strange timeline where it's just super fascinating. You gotta listen to them, where it different people who hold the disc go to different places within that world's timeline, and the way it like the way that technology evolved in the timeline, and sort of the way that culture approaches technology. Like, you think of it these days, like, you know, we all have a very, at least within the Western world, we have a very, you know, certain understanding of science as it is, sort of the interconnected, you know, of science the way it is. But think about, like, you know, say you had just come here from, like, you know, maybe you grew up on a remote island or whatever, and someone explained it to you differently. Someone explained that, like, you know, power was like magic or something else, and just the way they describe things, the way that, like, that these phenomenon are characterized has a completely different perspective, and that's one of the better features of that SCP story, is that everything has this very, very highly Halo is a good comparison. The way all the elites and prophets talk about Forerunner technology like they're holy relics and stuff. It's very much like that, but of a different fictional religion, obviously, and yeah, it's just really, it's a really neat story. And then there's other readers too. Like, there's what's his name? East Side Stories SCP, I think that's what it's called. And he has a much higher volume because it's a little bit more fast and loose. It's still great reads, but it's like, you know, just sort of read over a basic music like template. But he's read some really interesting ones, like Oh Death. I think it's SCP 2780 something or whatever. It's like the letter O, comma, death, and it's about one of the Foundation, the main SCP, like the actual SCP agency. They find like a mysterious signal, and they go into a cave, and when they go through the cave on the other side, they're in the same cave, but it's like almost a mirror image. And the world they end up in on the other side, the alternate other world, is dead. Everything is dead. Every plant, every animal, every creature is dead. It's like, you know, God decided to flip the switch, and every bacteria, every cell, every living thing in existence, from the biggest blue whale down to the smallest, you know, bacterium, just dies in place. And so because of that, all the larger animals are just sitting there. They're sort of like, not like leather, but they're just sort of like dry husks, because there's no bacteria there to break them down or eat them. There's no larva or maggots to break them down into matter and bones. So everything is literally just dead. And the way that story plays out is so interesting. Let me see here. Yeah, SCP stories. Science based on untested theories. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, too. I mean, one of the key facets, not necessarily of science, but of technology, of like day-to-day technology, is that something is not necessarily that we understand how it works, but that it's repeatable. Is that it's like, it works a certain way enough of the time that we can make use of it. But it's like, especially now with modern like quantum science and stuff, when you look into things like what's it called? Obviously I'm not a quantum physicist, but it's like the concept with an electron, where you can either see where an electron is at a certain moment or how fast it's going, but you can't see both. It's like you can only see one way or another, or just like how things seem to behave differently whether you're observing them or not, on like that kind of level. And it's just like, I don't know, man. I feel like when you go deep enough down, we're just going to find a layer of code, and it's going to be fucking simulation theory, and we're all going to be in some, 12-year-old hyper-celestial being, just, his game of The Sims, and we're all wondering who's the main character of his story. I heard one really interesting theory. This is when I was just like screwing around YouTube one day, and it was someone talking about simulation theory, but that it was all of the like deities in human history were like players. That they were like, they were the player controlled characters of whoever was running our simulation. So we're all essentially like the generated NPCs. And then they'd have like, Buddha character has entered the play, and they do the Buddha stuff, and then maybe that guy logs off for a while, and then Jesus logs in for just 30 years, and then he logs off for a really long time. And it's just one of those like weed type conversation videos, but it was a really fascinating thing to hear, and just imagining how things would be if it were like that. And then you go and watch the Super Best Friends episode of South Park or something and have a good time with that. Now that we're at the 2.5 hour mark, I'd like to remind Vermont and Needle that this is what happens when you leave me alone. This is what happens when you guys aren't available to podcast, when I'm like decompressing from a long week, is that then I go on very long monologues. What if EAST Corp produced some kind of SCP-style series? I mean, honestly, that would be something I might try to tackle myself after the end of Confessions and Wasteland Survival Guide, obviously, because that would be neat. It would definitely be it would be fun to have a few more like shorter story, something to replace Wasteland Survival Guide in terms of like shorter writing bits. Sort of like how Confession started out as, but maybe shorter still, even shorter than the X-Raider. Because I've always been a fan of Ray Bradbury's work and other like big short story sci-fi authors like Lovecraft and stuff, and just like being able to work within that format for just tiny little things. And honestly, some of like Stephen King's best work have been short stories too. Like The Mist, one of my favorite works of his, was just a short story. Quantum paradox, which rules apply? Yeah, that is the big question, isn't it? What kind of are we looking at the position of the electron or at the movement of the electron? No. All that really matters is you reproduce your genes. That's the driver, right? It's just you got to get to that next step in the process, that continuum. Oh my God. Or have fun doing it. That's yeah, so hopefully this has been an enjoyable podcast for any of you that are like, maybe you're stuck at an even worse job than I had this week, and hopefully this has kept you company during that period of time. A cooking Fallout with EAST Corp show. Oh, did I miss someone's chat? What if I start writing independent stories? Can you pitch a series to the channel? Yeah, you always can. I know the status of the channel I'm not sure about, because I know well, then again, James has already kind of taken it beyond just the nuclear horror stories. And luckily, EAST Corp as like a name, as like the over-branding factor is much easier to diversify. It's not like Stable Tech. It's not like, Nuclear Horse Corporation, which were Nuclear Horse Productions was another one we thought of when we were first breaking free, because that was always a joke of, if we could unite all the major Fallout Equestria groups together, it'd be one Nuclear Horse server or whatever. But luckily, yeah, the way the EAST Corp worked out, we could keep it generalized and, keep using it forward as our storytelling platform. I know James is already doing that with Untypical, so I could see what I end up doing after Confessions. So it'll be fun. And yeah, maybe we could potentially opened up to other other writers and other contributors as well. It really all just depends. It really, all I'm thinking about is getting through to the end of our existing stuff. Is I want to see Terminal Secrets 100% wrapped and see Confessions 100% wrapped and Wasteland Survival Guide. Like, just getting to the end of each of those, that's the end of a 5-year journey for me. That was going to feel so good to just see something like that through to some kind of completion. Yeah, with Terminal Secrets, we could have made a lot more of the Terminal Secrets. That wasn't, it wasn't my show, but I know as far as James goes, people have heard the various forms of life that Terminal Secrets took, even before we were able to get that first one off the ground. So very early on, James, he had a lot of different ideas for how he wanted that to go, and unfortunately, a lot of them got killed off really early on. And then, with Dose and things, it's sort of, when they were finally able to launch, I had a little bit of an influence in it myself, which, I did push, it's James' show, whatever he wanted to ultimately do with it, but it seemed like that evolved. Like, by the time episode 3 rolled around, he had sort of changed the way he wanted the story to unfold, and then especially between Tinned Mint and Awake, there was another sort of permutation of the idea. So so it's gonna end up the way it is. But to be honest, I mean, I've read the entirety of the Terminal Secrets ending. I really love it. I think it's a very good ending and very heart-wrenching, and I think people will enjoy it. I think it all worked out in the end, and and it's also long too, so everyone will be happy about that, where it's going to be by far the longest Terminal Secrets. Oh my god, we got five Eagle Bucks donation from Neon Green, and the money donation itself is Neon Green. Thank you. I am so late, and I am on data to watch you. Love you. What did I miss? You have no idea. It's one unbroken train of thought from me not being allowed to have any kind of creative outlet for 7 straight fucking days. Working 13-hour days where it's like, as soon as I park in my garage, I'm going to bed, and then waking up at 4 a.m. and going back out, and son of a bitch, it was a bad week. I'm so glad this week is over. I really hope I don't go to work on Monday and now it's like, a whole bunch of other problems with all these deadline things that were due. It's like, I think I got them done in a good order. Oh yeah, that is true. I showed indisputable proof that K-Cat is Todd Howard. You know what the trick was that Todd Howard, he got that tattoo above his left nipple that says K-Cat. That's his call sign. That's why you never see him with his shirt off. Says I am K-Cat, and that's a little picture of Little Pip winking below said nipple. So, but I've seen it myself. It was fun. We went swimming. Yeah, oh, Jesus. We got someone else in the chat. How's it going, Cinda?
Well, pleasure to see you.
Have you been keying into any of this, or are you just you just stepping in?
I just saw that you were in voice.
Yeah. No, we're broadcasting live, just FYI.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so you wanna just be careful. No, we're just shooting the shit with the chat. We got 5 bones, 5 America bucks, so that's been pretty sweet. And otherwise, I was just telling them about my horrible week. We're just it's been a long week. I had like 60 hours of work in just the last 5 days and all this other crap, where I'm just glad it's over. But hopefully everything's going good with you. Any fun times?
Well,
I understand that.
argue that.
Yeah.
They would be lying.
I get the feeling. We have Circle in the chat. Is the stream still going? Yes. You think I would hold a stream that's less than 3 hours long now? Unfathomable.
As far as I know, you've been doing this alone. Just chilling here, chatting with the chat.
For 2.5 hours. We've been looking at adorable pictures of Rarajack, though, which have been great.
I mean, they have been shipping that really hard, so I can understand why.
Oh my gosh. I guess something about it was like an Equestria Girls like short or something. And ever since then, my timeline has been flooded with the most adorable diamonds and apples. And I can't get enough of it. So.
Oh, yeah, no. They've actually... they have really gone overboard with it.
People are saying they...
I mean, I know you...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I know you get the regular points where it's, oh, okay, so we have a whole lot of bedroom eyes going this way and that way, but they've gotten a little less subtle.
Yeah. Oh, 2 more America Bucks from Neon Green. I gotta go because of data, but love you guys. Thank you, Neon Green, for the America Bucks.
Agreed.
You just paid us for another
Neon
artwork.
Green.
Oh, they couldn't hear you. I turned your volume up because I was listening to very, very soft horse music in the background at the initial part of the stream because I just finished up work, and so I was like, "Hey, anyone remember Derpidity? That old brony artist? He had some great stuff."
Yeah. Huh. Well, fair enough. And now that you can hear me, it's time for me to take my leave.
Yeah. No, thank you for joining us.
I've got a little work to do for a certain some pony.
I'm sure you do.
I'm sure you're sure.
All right. Have a good night, Cinder.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you more later.
Yeah. See you later. Oh, and keep an eye on your email lately.
Oh,
Later.
I will. Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. Let's continue being vague.
Okay. Yeah, have a good night.
Have a good one. Oh, and why did? To answer your question, I've been in Untypical, and I've been in, a recent and rather fun little episode
Of Terminal Secrets.
Yes.
So you want to check that out. You gotta go wake up to the last episode of Terminal Secrets.
Yes, you do.
And probably some other stuff soon too.
Yes, I mean, since you're here already, you might as well like and favorite and subscribe. And hey, SkyBolt, we need to get a picture of you. You know, like get one of those really fuzzy JPEG artifacted to all hell pictures for the background and thumbnail, and then just a high resolution picture of your face going, ah!
Yeah, if everyone can smash the motherfucking like button, that would be great.
I'll let you go.
All right, have a good one.
And from me, and all of the chaos that you've heard lately, thank you for listening.
Ta-ta-da. Okay, I should probably shut down the Discord stream because Cinder's always a nice addition, but we can't. There we go. Gotta be careful who pops in on the stream. I always fear that, like, someone dropping in on the stream and they don't know it's broadcasting and they might say something they aren't supposed to say. Not Cinder. Too professional. But, you never know. So, let's throw up some fresh Rarajack. I'm doing everything in my power not to drop the looter stuff on the stream because I don't want to get our channel, like, nuked or something. Or, what's the word? Is it, Wozniak or whatever her name was. It's Polish, I think. It's so much easier just saying Zucked. I wish you could just say Zucked about everything. It's just, well, then again, Mark Zuckerberg's not even going to own Facebook soon if the stock tumbles anymore. He's getting Zucked himself. But yes, thank you, Wydid666 for the 2 America Bucks. Question, have you ever had good from Gringo's Restaurant? I've never heard of capital G Gringo's Restaurant. I've been to a few restaurants that have been described by my more Latin American friends as gringo restaurants, but not something with a proper name. Once I maybe get a new computer, I could try out for the Amoria's Loin song. I think that's one thing James has always wanted, was an Amoria's Loin song, and I'll be honest, I mean, I've told Kelly for a year now. I'm like, make whatever Amoria music you want. That's the hot ticket. Everyone loves your Amoria stuff. And he's like, which is fine, because he's been cranking out tons of other great songs, but it's like, we really should have one more Amoria album before we close the book on the Nuclear Horse stuff. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, Amoria's Loins. That'll be a special chapter Wasteland Survival Guide always. We've had a fun time with that. I really enjoyed the way Wasteland Survival Guide worked out. I like the way that each of them have like little bitty kind of like diary-esque narratives. That's definitely more, Vermont's idea. Or I probably wouldn't have written that way, or at least not that way to such an extent if Vermont hadn't made them like mini narratives. So it had a good effect on the story overall. However, it's definitely not going to end up in the same order. We've actually already pretty much decided on the final order of the chapters, and it puts everything in a more in a better context in terms of being an actual survival guide. So that's obviously more my influence, but within the individual stories, they play out much better. So that'll be fun. Yeah, Cinder has a great voice, absolutely. Rose cannot leave the garden. Only ponies can leave the garden. See, yeah, I feel bad. I haven't been listening to his Terminal Secrets little deals. It sounds interesting, though. I read one of the comments that was saying something about, like, horses. Horses in the Rose Garden. Nuclear horses are always part of you, like radiation. Yeah, eventually, when you get old, you get a piece of cancer that neighs at you, and you have to, you can't remove it. Just like horses, you can't remove the small horses from your brain, from your existence. It's something that's always part of you. Can you believe My Little Pony now, the modern My Little Pony? We're like 7 years on of the Brony fandom. This is nuts. Like, I look back over my life and I'm like, I've been sort of developing my career and stuff, but like creative side, it's all been like this, like this crazy amount of opportunities that I've had just from doing stupid like horse stuff online. I still can't imagine it. Like, ever since I started listening to the Rooster Teeth podcast when I was in high school, over a decade ago, I always wanted to do like some kind of podcasty thing. And then early on, I had my chance with Lunar Echoes, rest in peace, Danny, and then more recently, I wormed my way into the Stable Talk, and now Stable Talk is this. It's all of us talking. And we're out of the stable, and the Moonrise and stuff, and I always wanted to like write books or novels, like interconnected, like long form storytelling. And then Confessions came along, and on top of that, it's a radio play, which is another thing I always really wanted to get into and have that sort of like radio voice kind of thing. And short form stories like Wasteland Survival Guide. And music, getting to write lyrics for just new songs, and then just the simple parodies too. It's incredible the opportunities I've had thanks to Small Horses. I can't complain about that. I think we've all had a fun time along the way. Yeah, see, the Rarebud is nice, but that Applejack on the right there, that's a nice tush. Hey Sky, do you prefer Project Horizons or classical Fallout Equestria? See, I haven't really listened to Project Horizons. I've read through, I think, chapter 8, and that's about it. It's too long. I don't have the time to devote to absorbing the story. Even doing the original Fallout Equestria was like a marathon of will, where it was like is literally like 6 weeks at work where I was doing like really monotonous jobs where I was writing down essentially serial numbers on doors to make sure that every door was properly labeled in like our space inventory system for like accounting of like lights and other crap. And so that kept me busy. And so it gave me an opportunity to sit there for 64 hours and listen to the Craze Rambling audiobook. But, you know, and then you like double that for Project Horizons. And I'm like, I just don't have the time. And really, if I read it serialized, like the way it was written, like, you know, most people who followed it probably wouldn't have the same effect either. And I probably wouldn't I probably wouldn't have hung on the longest time either. If I started following it, you know what, say chapter 20, I really doubt I would have gone, you know, held on all the way to chapter 30 or 40 because those big gaps of time are hard. It's like I want the end of the story. It's one reason I can be a bit of a slowpoke to things like the original Fallout Equestria is because I want to wait until I have an end, or there is an end, so I don't waste my time, especially with something like that. I remember early on, I really got into the End of Ponies fanfic. That was, I think they started in like 2012, but I don't think he ever finished it. It's very like steampunky, but had a really interesting tone to the story, a very neat sort of like empty, not even like Fallout, but like an empty wasteland kind of feel to it. And I think it starred Scootaloo, right? And but she had like a blimp or something. Anyway, one of the reasons I found it was because of the Pony One Kenobi song about it, End of Ponies. And that was such a good song that kind of like hooked me into the tone and the idea of it. And I read like, I want to say 20 chapters, and that was all that had been written at the time. And then I kind of forgot about it for like a year or two and maybe discovered Fallout Equestria finally or whatever. But then I don't think that story ever ended. It honestly is like Project Horizons up until a year ago. It was still going on. Still no ending. And it's like, I can't do it. I can't commit. Not something that size unless I know there's an ending. So maybe now, maybe someday I'll go back to Project Horizons, but at the same time, I want to finish Confessions first because I'd also hate for there to be like, it's like Schrodinger's cat. I don't want to have an idea that, of course, I'm impressioning off of the Fallout series that obviously someone like Somber or the other 100 or so, people that write Fallout Equestria fan fiction have probably already made use of themselves, and I'm like, I know that's probably a thing they've done, but I don't want to read about it, because if I don't read about it, then I'm not stealing the idea. Then it's just, it's just co-evolution. It's not series. And it feels more original. Oh, God. Just like Star Wars and Star Trek, it will never truly die. No, that's true, too. I mean, Star Trek fandom didn't go anywhere. I mean, the older fandom just kind of, like, simmered after, like, what was that, Generations? And then the new, probably their children, more specifically, the Next Generation fans came up, and they got into the Star Trek that was sort of all their own. And, yeah, it's a thing. It's, it'll be kind of the same with Pony, too. In a really weird way. I really don't know what that's going to look like down the road, Hopefully, I'll have a wife, kids of my own. My brother actually just had, I just became an uncle again, so that was kind of cool. And it's like, I don't know. And then you see some of the love stories unfold too of these like people who met because of this ridiculous horse fandom or within the context of it or something. And it's like, damn, like Mando Pony meeting Sibsy as a show artist is incredible. Like, the way that worked out. And there were other stories like that too, but it's just like, that's like, I mean, honestly, that's something I'd almost like to see like an indie movie about someday. The story of like a couple coming together over something so ridiculous as like, a fandom thing, especially for Mando Pony. That actually would make a really good movie. Stylized probably a little bit, but I mean, that's a neat concept. Or even basing something like that off of them without directly like, mimicking their exact details of their lives. But it's fascinating. Yeah, so I don't know. Life is funny. It's like, especially with fandom things, it's sort of like, it's like you want to be happy. You want to be able to like enjoy the life, the few years you have, you know, especially, you know, in the possible or likely scenario that it's like, this is it. When you die and everything's just black. It's you want to make the most of your existence. And it's a tricky thing finding, like, you know, just working hard enough to where you can, you know, be self-sufficient and do the things you want to do, but not working so much where your entire life gets consumed by work. Because it's like, even if you love your job, no one really, really loves their job. It's still a job. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking for money to do it. And it's like, it's all about finding that happy medium between work and hobbies and activities and fun. And, like, you know, it's so rare that all of them come together and you also have a vibrant social life, and you have, you know, a lot of, like, travel life to it. And that's, I think especially after college, that's something that you really get hit with, like, I just had a friend get married too, so I've had that on my mind lately. It's, oh God, I'm happy for all these guys, but it's like, it's like when you play a Fallout character and you like front load a lot of one special skill early. So it's like, say you put everything into endurance. So it's really great early on. You can endure a lot of things, but then it's like little by little, you're like, okay, gotta drop one more chip into charisma. Now you're up to 4, and then one more chip. Now you're up to 5, and then you get an implant and you're up to 6, or other things like that. And it's just like, it's hard. Like, especially if you're a fan of RPGs, you think about the RPG, quote unquote, elements within your own life, the actual daily decisions that affect your day-to-day, you know, the day-to-day playthrough of your own life. And it's just, it's hard, man. There's never enough time in the day. And it's like one thing I said on Twitter recently, which was, and don't follow me on Twitter. It's goofy. You probably don't want to do that. But with writing or really any kind of creative ambitions, it's always about time, energy, and inspiration. And you'll never have all three at the same time. It's like, even if you do, for some reason, it'll be such a small window, you won't actually be able to make use of it at all. It'll always be, you'll have time and energy, but no creativity, or you'll have creativity and energy, but no time, or you'll have time and creativity, but no energy, and it just sucks. And really, any kind of artistic endeavor, especially for any level of money, or like at a bread-winning kind of pace, where you're like, your job is being an artist or a YouTuber or an actor or whatever, it's, I'd argue that it's almost harder than a day job. Like, rather than, like, you know, checking into an office and out like 9 to 5, having to muster the strength to, you know, go to those, you know, 14-hour shoots and do one movie or another, or doing a shitload of commercials just to be easy money, and then having to fly around the world and do, like, you know, a hair care commercial or something. I don't know. It's like, it's a very high gamble to make, like, an art kind of thing a profession, because then there's either a high chance you fail, or even if you make enough to be sustainable, it's always a struggle. Then everything in life is about the last dollar and just making sure you have enough to, you know, keep your lodging and keep yourself fed and maybe support other family or a spouse or whatever. It's hard, man. It's really hard. Fuck. Oh, yeah. Yeah, other people who've met friends and stuff. Yeah, no, I know. I've met... I mean, just really, that's another thing that blew my mind, too, is the concept of all these friends and things from all over the world, and a very much more, like, kind of global mindset that I never, not that I never had. I was never very sheltered. My parents are very worldly in a lot of ways, but yeah, you know, just when you actually talk day to day with someone who lives on the opposite side of the planet, it's something... it's something really crazy. It's like I talked about in my Fall of an Empire video, where it's like, you know, it's something that just didn't exist, you know, even 100 years ago. You like, you know, you don't maintaining a daily friendship with someone like that, and maybe you could call or something, but the level of production we can do now, it's crazy. I think about, like, that's one reason it was so cool finally getting to see the L Train in person at Everfree this year. I'm so happy I was able to make it to Everfree just for that reason. That was such a fun time. Okay, stepping away from the existential stuff, we have Roy Mustang in the chat. Have you seen the Brickleberry ripoff that's coming to Netflix? No, I've never heard of that. I know of Brickleberry. That's the show starring the little, it's like the national park, and it's got the little bear voiced by Daniel Tosh, right? Because I remember back, like, well, I guess it wasn't too long ago, but a couple of years ago, I did kind of get into Daniel Tosh for a while. I appreciate that level of, like, kind of edgy for the sake of edgy comedians, and especially with, like, Tosh.0, I feel like he did that Tosh.0 format better than, like, Chris Hardwick did with the Talk Soup and some other shows like that, or Joel McHale, or no, was it Joel McHale with Talk Soup? Anyway, I don't know. I felt like Daniel Tosh handled that format a lot better with his style of comedy. I don't know. Maybe I was just out of college and in the mood for, like, edgy, like, MTV style humor or Comedy Central style humor. Yeah. Oh, I imagine it's dirty. Yeah, in the chat, of course it's dirty, especially if it's anything remotely Daniel Tosh inspired. Holy cow! Yeah, he can get really out there. It's yeah, entertainment's a hell of a thing, man. It's like almost like a polarization where some entertainment is getting edgier and edgier, and then some entertainment is getting much softer. Like it's like you see all these shows being rebooted from the 80s and 90s, and they look like kids gloves version. It's like I don't know, you know, you get the modern Powerpuff Girls, for instance, or modern this or modern that. Modern Teen Titans Go compared to the original Teen Titans. And it's like, man, what happened? It's like they got like castrated, where they're just like these, I don't know, if the sensitivities of the youth are either higher, or the adults are taking that approach much worse for some reason. I don't know. It was just the time I grew up in, where you had, you had The Simpsons on one channel, which admittedly is tame by today's standards, but then you flip it and you got South Park on another channel, and then you got MTV and all that stuff, and especially with the internet, like the internet evolved beyond that, where you had those really, really edgy corners, and even still on things like Adult Swim. I remember when Adult Swim very first started, I was, not an adult, but I found it very fun, especially as an anime distribution engine. Adult Swim was really good about bringing some of those to the States and the Greater West. That was kind of cool. There's a show from the guy who made Avatar and how bad that looks. Oh, is that the Aaron Ehasz show? I mean, admittedly, I don't know really much of anything about it. I know that it's like the main writer from The Last Airbender, and so my hopes were high, but admittedly, yeah, I don't know much about it. All I know is that I think there's like two brothers, and there's like dragons or some shit. And so I guess that was enough for me to at least be like curious, where I'm going to check it out at some point. Circling back to like American, like Asian inspired animation though, how good was Castlevania? Speaking of Netflix, cause that's coming out soon too, as a distribution platform for entertainment. How good is Castlevania? God, I remember, just like with Stranger Things actually, where it was just like, I heard, oh, there's this new show on Netflix, like, check it out. And I came home on like a Friday after work, and I normally don't like to do much on Fridays because it's like, I just got off work, I just want to chill. So I was like flipping channels, and then there was, I was flipping through the Netflix like stream layers, and there's Castlevania, and I'm like, man, I didn't even play the games, but the trailer like auto ran, and I was like, damn, look at this animation. So rich and vibrant, and the fire effects and of Dracula and the fuck, I forget what they're called. The the Brotherhood followers looking guys. In the capes. The what are they? The Unspoken or whatever? Where you've got the chick, the redhead chick. Anyway, I was like, oh, that is cool looking. I was immediately hooked just from the art style, just from the detail of the animation. And it's like, man, could we sacrifice like 30 shows on television for one more of those every year instead? Oh, that would be an easy trade. Speaking of Netflix, BoJack Horseman is going to be on Comedy Central. Again? Didn't it start there? I thought it was like it started on Comedy Central and then it got kicked to distribution. So is it like being revived back from Netflix? That would be interesting. I guess we're in the age where it's going to start happening too, where or successful stuff that starts on Netflix might get picked up by television as like a secondary, like that's the way things will flow now. Things will start off on one of the streaming networks, and then old school television that'll be around another like 20 years or so, that they'll start showing reruns of these big shows that started on Netflix. You'll have Turner Ultra Classic Movies, and it'll play like, oh, we're having a Stranger Things marathon on Halloween Eve. And that's another thing that's such old television, which is tune in at this very specific time on your screen to watch this thing. Like, obviously, release date is a thing. So yeah, you can't watch Stranger Things until it actually drops on, October 30th or whatever. But, I mean, especially in a post-YouTube world, it's like the whole concept of having to show up at a specific time, like you owe your schedule to a screen, is so archaic thinking. I mean, the only reason it ever worked that way is that that was in a pre-VCR, pre-Betamax world. You think of the era that, like, everyone's parents grew up in between the 40s and 60s, where it's like, no, if you wanted to watch, one of those spaghetti westerns, right? If you want to watch, like, Amos and Andy, or whatever, you had to show up at a screen, at a working transmission receiving box at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then at that time, there would be a broadcast signal on the airwaves from some big television tower, 100 miles away. And if you had your monitor on, it would pick up that broadcast and translate it into visual images for you to enjoy your spaghetti western, for you to enjoy your, whatever show. What is it? Almost said Beavis and Butthead. Leave It to Beaver. It's archaic. It's old technology. It's like being asked to, like, I don't know. It's like being asked to, like, write on parchment in order to request a driver's license or something. Like, I guess a lot of things are still on paper these days, but it's like literal parchment in order to, like, get some kind of documentation. It's like, no one does that anymore. It's like, honestly, even before it actually releases, you could probably find some kind of, like, leak or rip of it online somewhere else anyway. It's like, God, I mean, it's so old world thinking. No, it's never going to be that way again. I'd be very surprised if it ever went back to that for any reason other than an artificial release schedule, where, like movies, of course, movies are kind of like that, where every 2 years then you're waiting for maybe a sequel or something. But like a television season, like dripping out once a week, that's going to go by the wayside soon. I mean, especially with the Netflix format, it is becoming more and more, even with premium television, with things like HBO and Game of Thrones, that's only going to work for very specific series and only for a very specific amount of time. I mean, hasn't literally every Game of Thrones season for the last 3 or 4 seasons, like half of the season leaked online early on anyway? That's one of the reasons these half seasons have become a thing, is because then the network or the studio only has to drop the first half to the distribution companies just in case it leaks. At least then, if it leaks, then the ending of the show or the big spoiler isn't out before everyone's not even seen the pilot yet, or the first episode of the season. From the dark side, have you seen Shino Dage's Space Ponyos? It's extremely good, minus the porn. What? What is this, like a porn like television series? What? It's like an adult novel. I mean, I'll be honest, I've seen a lot of shit. So if something has an interesting story, I can tolerate a lot. I really like, I don't know. Once you've seen enough Live Leaks videos, like, I don't think anything bothers you anymore. It's like it's again, the old Simpsons joke, and well, probably they were way ahead of themselves on that one. But it's like the old Simpsons joke where it's like, oh yeah, we're Generation X, we're desensitized against everything. And then like the itchy and scratchy robot breaks down and like bleeds all over them and it's screaming. And Lisa and Bart are just like kind of staring at it like deadpan. It's one of those things. But no, I mean, if something's got a good enough story, it's, it's interesting. Maybe not porn level, but, anyway. Yeah, no, I mean, you think about it, too. Like, it felt like the 80s and 90s especially was, like, people were racing to get to that point. In a lot of ways, that sort of, like, that religious right, at least in America, that sort of religious right, like, revival in the late 90s was kind of a reaction to that. It was kind of a reaction of, you had, it's like the Family Guy theme. Oh, yeah, the violence in movies and sex on TV. But in a lot of ways, almost like the opposite, too. It's all at least in American television, the problem is always the opposite, where American television is nothing but violence on the television. And then it's in the movies where you get a lot of the sex and the really dirty, raunchy stuff. And so, yeah, and so then you had those late, fourth revival Puritans of the 90s come along and say that, your Harry Potters and your Pokemans are evil and you're going to hell. And obviously that lasted all of 5 years, and then we all had to suffer through the the fedora tipping atheist phase of YouTube, and then that fell by the wayside too. Then once there was something that suddenly is a little bit too. It was a little bit too outside of the scientific spectrum that they like, oh no, stop talking about this. God, that was such a cringeworthy phase. I mean, I'm not going around like a holy roller or anything, but at some point it's embarrassing. It's the Shrek fedora picture of just stop. You're not arguing against anybody anymore. We're 100 years on from the Scopes trial, and you're acting like you're some kind of like it's some kind of like attacked group. Give me a break. Yeah, but anyway, so then ironically, the religious right thing, that kind of died down completely, and now you're getting a whole different kind of, softening, or soft censorship, where everything's becoming sanitized from the other side of things, and it's like, well, fuck, man, we can't just, we can't have our raunchy, movies anymore, or violence. Here's another thing. Once you sanitize things too much, it's always a bad sign. It's always the sign, and this goes all the way back. You can listen to the very first EAST Corp Break Room podcast where James and I talk about this. There's a reason why sanitization is bad at all. You want your population to a certain percentage be desensitized to some things, because it means they have an understanding of reality. Because let's say, for instance, I mean, in America, it's like a big joke. They say, "Oh yeah, if you're homeschooled, you're sheltered. You're sheltered. You have no life experience. You don't know how the real world works." Which, I mean, sometimes that's true. Sometimes that's a case where then it's like you become an adult and you go out and you get cheated out of your first car or something, or life starts happening to you. It's like, yeah, that's bad. I mean. But you think of that in the context of just modern civil society, that's nothing, You take a look at some place where society isn't really working right now, I don't know, the edges of Syria. You think that can't happen here or any place else in the West? It's like, it can easily happen anywhere else. And it's like people that don't have an understanding of like, you know, this thing, whatever it is, could actually kill you. And this could be a very horrible, violent end. Like, I remember last time I was in San Diego, there was a story about some horrible, like, gang, like, beheading that happened, like, in Tijuana. And I'm like, shit, that was, like, 50 miles from me, just south of the border. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Really? Like, this guy had head chopped off with a chainsaw? And it's one of those things where, you know, at some point when people think this, like, it's not make-believe. It's not television. There's a lot of really horrible things in the world. And if people keep thinking of these things like they're just stories within the magic box and they think everything's going to be safe, then at some point, if everything suddenly doesn't work anymore, or, you know, the frail veneer of society crumbles around you, then you're just going to be lost, because then suddenly you're trying to navigate in this thing that would be so horrifying that you have no way of reacting to the situation. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know if self-sufficiency is the word, or like, I don't know. It's a philosophical concept more than anything. I'm not trying to tie any kind of like actual politics or anything to it. I'm just saying, in the general sense of life, it's good to have an understanding of what the world can be, because whatever is going on can easily happen anywhere else. You know, if you don't think your country could become a failed state for one reason or another, or if you don't think like horrible something or other can happen here, it can always happen here. It's anyway. This is what happens when James and Nita leave me alone on a podcast. Then it becomes existential monologuing. Shino's apogee. Okay. That was a misspelling. Yes, I recognize the artist Shino from his or her other stuff. And I recognize the character Apogee, and I recognize that there's some kind of storyline there, but I'm not super familiar with it. But yes, I understand that's half of Shino's stuff doesn't appear when you have the filters on Derpy Boru. Let's just put it that way. Oh, now we're asking for a pick refresh? Yes, let's find a pick refresh. What would be good? Oh, this one's just nice. Isn't that nice? Just a little hug. What else? Oh, here we go. This was the first picture I found to discover this artist. And it's rare. I just love it because it's Rarity talking about some expensive bag or something, and Applejack like, we just spent a whole bunch of money today already. Can we not? Can we just go home already? Oh God, I love it. This is very OTP. I don't think about like main cast ships too much, but this is pretty great. All right, there you go, chat. Enjoy. Oh yeah, that's another thing too. If you sanitize things too much, then people don't think about actual like moral weights and consequences. Like, I don't know. Let's say, for instance, you grew up in a society where everyone lost like their left hand. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason, everyone like gets their left hand cut off at age 3 for some kind of weird ritual. I don't know. It's like no one thinks about it because they're like, well, yeah, obviously your left hand gets removed, and then you get your like pirate, hook hand, and then you find that one person in society where they've got both hands, and you're like, oh, look at everything they can do. They can climb the monkey bars a lot easier without their hook hand, and it's one of those things where a society that doesn't know something is missing doesn't understand the loss of what's missing or the weight of what's missing until they're confronted by that thing. So, I don't know, other moral choices like, I don't know. It's one of those things. And honestly, I think a lot of these things come up as a writer too, because you really think about like the A, B, and C of everything. You think about how events like unfold over a timeline where things are supposed to intersect. And of course, we think about these things in a very narrative context, because a narrative is what we want to weave, because narrative is always better than reality. But even narrative, we create narrative. Human beings in general create narrative as a way of packaging reality within much more digestible contexts, especially classical forms like the 3-act story structure. You know, it's another byproduct of our experience of the world as we developed consciousness, as we developed sentience, and how we understand things, and how we package those things into the larger narrative of not only our individual existences, but of existence as a whole. And it's those kind of things that, how many pics do you have up right now? Oh yeah, well, I mean, the software isn't overloading, so I guess it's fine. But yeah, I every once in a while, these days at the end of every stream, I just delete all the pictures that I added up during a certain stream, except for a handful of other stuff. I don't think there's any no means no going on. They both seem very consenting in all of these TCN 1205 picks. This is very yes means yes. So, yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah, you know, it's funny talking like this on like a live stream. And one thing that I think is really cool about modern live streams and podcasts is it is like the modern evolution of the radio show. And even outside of things like, you know, like our very constructed like radio shows, like Confessions or whatever. But I grew up with a lot of like local DJs and local like talk show host kind of things, and it's an interesting. It's an interesting, very personal format. I mean, way back at the birth of radio, this is how the American president FDR had so much of America, like, you know, on his chain. Had so many people, you know, just emotionally tied to him as a person, is because he'd do these fireside radio chats. I want to say like once a week. I think it was like once every Sunday evening or something like that. Very almost Norman Rockwell, the way that was weaved into the national consequence. And so then because of that, he got away with some of the most like authoritarian government that America's ever been under. It's like, you know, people like to complain about a lot of presidents, but it's like FDR, he really was a dictator. I mean, he got away with one thing that no other American president has ever attempted, which is to run the country more than 8 years. That'd be like, I don't know, in some other national context, like coming in and saying like, oh yeah, I'm dictator for life now. Like, what? This was a system that was set up like informally by George Washington. Where George Washington didn't really want to be president, and basically like the young America was like, oh my God, you have to, you're like the American, and you know, you're the only reason we're free and everything, and won the war. And he's like, oh, God, fine. And so he did the 2 terms, but his approach to it was very somber and very, like, humbling, where he wanted to be a servant of the people. That was the whole concept, is you are the president. You are the executive that presided over a government of the people. And your power was at their consent through, you know, obviously the Electoral College isn't direct democracy, but there's very important reasons why it's not. But anyway, and so then every president after that just took that in stride. If they served any terms at all, it was just 2 terms and then period. And you even had a weird one, like, I think it was it Garfield? I think it was President Garfield, where he served 1 term and then he like took a break. Then he left for 4 years, and then he came back and he was president then another 4 years later in non-consecutive. And then you have this fucking New Yorker come in and be like, I am going to be president for the rest of my life. And if any of you try to complain about it, I'll just start a war. Or I'll get us involved in a giant war where you'll be too scared to even hedge your bets on anyone else. And then he was. And it's incredible. It's incredible the amount of freedoms people can give up when they're afraid. And yeah, it's like all these things are so strange when you look back at them. Maybe when you look back at them with more of a a bottom of the political compass kind of mindset, where it's like, okay, so we're kind of in a Great Depression right now, so all of you have to sell the government your gold. You have to right now. And everyone's like, what? Yeah, it's illegal. You can't contain any amount of privately owned gold above whatever it was, like 10 troy ounces or something. And like, you think of that in any other context, or like other crazy shit of the New Deal, where it's like, no, you can't grow any more food. You're going to throw off the balance of the market, the almighty market, where, no, if you grow any more wheat than this certain amount, you're going to get in trouble. You're like, everyone is starving, and you're going to punish people for growing food because of a very arbitrary system that's only been in place like 20 years under the Federal Reserve, and that's built on top of another arbitrary system that's only been in place like 100 years in the previous 100 years of American monetary policy. And it's like, yeah, it's like, my God, like, How did anyone tolerate this? It's like, well, honestly, they didn't, because then as soon as he kicked the bucket, as soon as all the wartime panic was over, then they passed an amendment, a national amendment. I want to say it's the 25th, which is incredibly hard to do. Within American history, within American context, it's really only been done 18 times, because the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments, were basically right off the bat. It was almost essentially automatic, right fresh off of the Constitutional Convention, because that happened in, I want to say, 1789, and then the Bill of Rights rolled out like 1790. It was like, the Bill of Rights was essentially the day one patch of the U.S. Constitution. And so anyway, that almost doesn't count. And then you bring into line the other amendments, like the 12th Amendment didn't happen for like decades. And I'm trying to remember what the 11th Amendment was. That was, it's something inconsequential. It was like probably some minor thing. And then, yeah, of course, you have the very important ones like 13 through 15. And then you don't get to the 16th Amendment until like the turn of the 1900s. And that's the damn income tax, which is bullshit. Fuck the income tax. And then you have like then you have the liquor amendments, 18 and, is it 18 and 21? I think it's 18 and 21 back to back, which is really funny. And then 19th in the middle, that's good, suffrage. And then, 25th, people were mad enough that FDR had made himself president for life, that they went out of their way, on top of a few other things, like presidential succession, where they're like, no more of this. You're president 2 years, as it had always been, and then you can leave. Thanks. Now, I'm sure for our European listeners, it's a much different context than some other like offices and other political contexts. But in American context, in the whole like view of American history, it's like he was a dictator. He was a monster. Like, I mean, again, this is before we even get to World War II. We're not even touching, Japanese internment or German internment, which is another thing that happened, or anything like that. And it's like, God damn. Anyway, so back to Fallout New Orleans. What were we talking about again? Prime Minister. Yeah, no, it's I understand, no, different political contexts. And I'm not going to argue, every system, you got your own rules for your own reasons, and I'm sure they make tremendous sense within your context. I'm just saying, for us, it's interesting. I think in a general sense, though, it is good to have term limits. It's just, this is my more personal view of just human nature. I think it's good, because then, like, then the whole point is you go in, you serve a purpose within a government, you do like a job, and then you leave. Like it's very like, you're obviously there to do something and make some active change, rather than to just seize power and become like, like a monarch or like a nobleman. Because that's the other thing. And that's another thing, like, luckily Americans find, or they used to find, unsettling, but it's like, there weren't really, or at least we try to stray away from that kind of nobility or like dynasties, at least within a formal sense. Anything that looks too close like a monarchy, like for instance, America, we had one Rockefeller that was, I think, vice president. I want to say vice president under, what was it under? Might have been Nixon. No, because that was Spiro Agnew. Anyway, we had one Rockefeller, and of course the Rockefellers were all rich, rich American family or whatever. But it's like actual political power. That's not like, it's not common. Usually it's for little, it's for small dynasties. Like you got your Bushes, which are awful, or then you get your Kennedys, which are awful, or the other dynasties where you try to have these like family whatevers. It's like no, you don't want those, because that's another thing that's anathema to politics is within like, this idea of like what royal blood, like you're a family that just deserves to rule over a populace for a while. That's bullshit. No, politics is about like a certain kind of leader for a certain period of history. It's like if you take it'd be like taking a Catherine the Great of like Russia from a very specific time of Russian history, and then just dropping them in like, I don't know, modern Slovakia or like, I don't know, some modern Asia or Africa or wherever. It's like, it doesn't work. A specific person only matters within a specific context, like the age that, and there are some people too, where it's like they seem like they're born out of place, or they're before their time or after their time. But it's like, I don't know. I just, the idea of politics as just like as like literally a silver spoon, like the senior, politician senior pulls the spoon out of his mouth and puts it in his baby's. That's cringeworthy. I'd rather have Fallout tier anarcho-capitalism than that. But that's just me. Yeah, republics follow a trend. I don't know. I think the US is beyond Roman Republic. I think we're in like 3rd century empire, We're about right before the hyperinflation kicks in. Oh yeah, land taxes as well. Yeah, the land taxes. Property tax sucks. It's like, I don't know. We made money before a lot of this stuff. And that goes into federalism too, where it's like the state level taxes being different from federal level taxes. And a lot of different stuff comes into play there too. But yeah, no, that's one of the fun things of American government as a, what was it once? I remember stringing together like all the proper terms when it was like when you're like grouping countries within like Venn diagrams. It's like America is a federally unified, democratically elected constitutional republic, something like that, where you add all the qualifiers in that apply to its system, and then you can add in like, bicameral. It's got the separate houses rather than just a single Senate or a single council. And it's interesting too how the like bicameral system has like unfolded ever since that became a thing, because obviously in Roman era it was just the Roman Senate, period. But now these days there's like a lot of countries have separate houses. There's House of Lords and House of Commons. There's what is it, there's other ones where, anyway, obviously my rambling has gone on way too long. So if anyone has any actual questions or topics, I can talk about pretty much anything. That's one thing that I've inherited from my mother, especially, where she does the same thing but all the time. Imagine the last 3 hours, but always. And you've met my mother, who I love. She's fantastic. But it's like, yeah, she really can talk nonstop for every moment of her life. So So in a way, it's good. It kind of it forced me and my siblings to be very quick, relatively quick-witted and conversational, and be able to really just have at least something to say about every subject. Name some YouTube channels you watch. God, I don't watch YouTube channels much anymore. Like SCP channels. That's SCP channels and Oxhorn. That's what I've been really into lately, as I discussed earlier. Because the Oxhorn, just going through all those detailed Fallout lore, especially in sections that I haven't listened to for a while, that's been a lot of fun. And then what's the other one I said? And then the SCPs for the same reason. It's really great getting the all those really interesting SCP lores. I'm looking for other screen pics. Why don't we go with a classic? What's my favorite stable idea? All of mine. All of mine, obviously. No, but my favorite stable idea. Well, obviously, I'm partial to our most recent one, the Awake stable. That was one that I thought up in the general sense anyway, at the very beginning of Terminal Secrets as a full production. So that's very near and dear to my heart. I really like I liked the Stable 80 idea that I came up with kind of for the Engineer. That was the one where that's where Amberhorn and Abalone come from, her mom and aunt, where essentially what the stable was, and I think my explanation is still in the comments section, but where the whole concept of the stable was that they would start slow rolling out diseases to the populace to essentially make them immune to everything. It was like, not like a vaccination per se, but like where everyone gets the sickness in a way where it's like engineering antibodies into their bloodstream, where you've just got a population that are super resistant. And I got the idea after watching a CPG Grey video, that like YouTube science guy, and he talks other stuff too, but I think the video is called Why There Was No America Pox, and he talks about why, like, during the Columbian Exchange, when like large amounts of the European populations, came into contact with large amounts of the Native American populations in the 1500s, why, the problems all arose from the Americans catching smallpox and all these other diseases, whereas with a few exceptions, like, there's like malaria and stuff, which had already existed on the other side of the world, but like there was no like big America pox that like wiped out all the Europeans back home or other settlers. And he sort of explains like why like some diseases, like a lot of large animal husbandry had led to like certain populations being more resistant, in the same way that the smallpox vaccine was eventually found. Like, the smallpox vaccine was developed from, I want to say, cowpox, and it would be cows with this cowpox, and then whatever that scientist was, he would harvest the fluid from the cowpox pustules and use that as a vaccine in the human body, where then it developed, the antibodies that also worked against smallpox. And so essentially, that was the concept of Stable 80, where it would slowly trickle out these various diseases of all kinds, so eventually there would be, a final stable population that was, like, resistant to everything, and then they could go forth and conquer and, completely rebuild the world with, like, super immune systems that couldn't get sick against anything. And then, of course, that goes wrong, like all the, like, classic stable fashion. So by the time, like, the machine started, like, I want to say, I never really explained it, but it's like one idea was that the machine was, like, speeding up and it was releasing new strains too quickly. And so it was literally just killing off the older population until all that was left were kids. kids that already had like a lot of engineered and like born into like antibodies from all these different strains. And so then the oldest one in the stable was Abalone, at a little 16-year-old teenager, you know. And then, you know, her younger sister Amber Glow, the little whiz kid, who's like, you know, like Cutie Mark Crusader's age, like 12 or whatever. And she gets their way out by opening the stable door. So I always thought that would be interesting, like telling an entire like Terminal Secret story about the arc of that stable all the way to them leaving and finally escaping. Have I seen the SCP animated series? No, I didn't know there was one. I've seen videos of the various SCP games that were really good, like the Containment Breach, and then I think they've rebuilt Containment Breach in some different game engine or something, and those are really cool. Do you watch the Shoddycast lore videos? I haven't really. I kind of checked them out at one point, but it didn't really grab me. I'll be perfectly honest. I think the overstory of the actual what is the character, the storyteller or the narrator or whatever, it didn't quite grab me. At least, I mean, I guess I kind of discovered it in the middle, so it was like some random episode I watched, and it was like a few too many minutes about the narrator stuff and not enough about just the Fallout lore. And so that really didn't do it for me. And then, like, recently, then discovering Oxhorn, it was much more kind of pure form in the way that he delivered the just basic Fallout storytelling, which is what I was looking for. So I definitely, at least for me, what I was looking for, Oxhorn is a much better, like, Fallout lore channel. Also, his Dead Money series was really great, just telling the story of Dead Money and the Sierra Madre and what happens to the villa and how, you know, what happened, why Vera Keys is the way she is, and Sinclair, who built the Sierra Madre, and then Dean Domino, of course. Very, very great storytelling. I love that stuff. Yeah, a lot of vaccines were made from horses in the chat. I know, yeah, quite a few. Because the key was the big animals, they were like similar enough to humans on some level. And then the other thing with big animals like horses and cows were you could get a lot of a vaccine out of, you know, one animal. So it's like if you make one horse immune to, you know, whatever, then, you know, you need like so many vials of horse blood. You can get a lot more blood out of a horse than you can, say, a dog or a mouse. So, for instance, pigs, like, for whatever reason, there's a lot of, like, genetic factors in pigs that are extremely similar to humans, and so that's why you get all those stories, or, like, people getting transplants of, like, literally just a pig heart, or a pig liver, or pancreas, or something. I know early in the days, before they could synthesize insulin, they literally had to just harvest like pig pancreases, I think, and that's how you know, like severe diabetics had to manage, which is awful. But yeah, it's fascinating. Some of that science. Yeah, so yeah, fun stable ideas. As far as I don't know about any other stable ideas within other stories, because here, see, that's the thing. I kind of walled myself off from other stories because I don't want to rip off ideas, and also I don't want to like close myself off to possibilities by having too many Fallout-derived stories in my own internal headcanon. So for instance, I've seen part of, or I've listened to part of Pink Eyes, but that's about it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, I think I've just about talked myself out at it was nice though. It was a good decompression stream. I try not to do these too often, you know, just take the helm of the microphone and just, you know, talk to you guys on my own for a little while. But I think at this point, everyone on the channel understands the context of if we're having a full stream or if we're having just a little screwy whatever thing. It gives people something to listen to if they find it interesting at all. And yeah, I guess it's just that it's like established. Like, I know I tried the stream over on my own channel, but it was kind of, it felt weird. It felt like the audience didn't understand the context of how it was going, and it was just like, it wasn't meant to be. Even though, I mean, you know, we've kind of fostered this on the channel now. This is sort of one of the alternate reasons for the EAST Corp channel, is it gives us a vector to do these fun little live streams, and you guys can chat with us as just creators and just horse people. So that's always fun. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go chill, and yeah, hopefully you guys are having have a good weekend. I hope I have a good weekend too. So nothing else comes up over the next couple of days. That'd be great. Or when I go back to work. So, or end up in the hospital again is another thing. So yeah, hopefully you guys have a good time. We are pushing forward with Confessions. It's so great. I'm so excited. We're so close. It's literally 2 pieces of art and like the final like hour and a half to edit, where I'm just waiting for some lines, and it's gonna be so good. Hopefully by mid-August. It'll be out in August at some point at the latest. It won't be before September. That's for sure. Just a few more weeks, guys. We're so close. Okay? So anyway, we love you all. We appreciate all our fans and our bucks donations on today's cast. And yeah, we will talk to all of you later.